Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto God of Destruction Percy Jackson. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Wrath of the Sun Deity and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. There is a saying, a deep voice resonated within Percy's mind, all things come with a price. Percy looked around wildly, panic setting within his heart as he tried to find the source of the voice. Don't try and find me. The voice stated, amusement evident in its tone, and I suggest you calm down. Your uncle looks like he's about to have a heart attack. Percy suddenly remembered that he wasn't alone, how he forgot in the first place was a mystery in itself. As he looked at the king of Olympus, Zeus, he noticed how his skin was turning an interesting shade of red, just like Thalia did whenever she got angry. He was going to have to defuse the situation as quickly as possible. I apologize, my lord. What were you saying? Zeus gazed at his nephew, disapproval evident on his face, as he held his lightning bolt. What assurance do I have that you won't betray Olympus? You have none, my lord. All you have is my oath. Percy bowed, his head almost touching the ground, as he knelt before his king. From the corner of his eye, he could see his father, Poseidon, clenching his trident, ready to smite any who would dare touch his son. Zeus snorted, that will have to do for now, but know that I will be watching you. Percy breathed out a sigh of relief, that could have gone bad really quickly. Well done, Percy. Now let us talk. The voice stated as the world around Percy shifted, like a ripple in the water. The young demigod clenched his eyes shut, trying to shield his eyes from the disorienting sight. You can open your eyes again, the voice stated. Percy did just that and was surprised to find himself in a new location, one quite unlike any other. It was an all-encompassing white and nothing else except for two great doors. In front of him, a white shadow stood, its mouth set in a wide grin. Do you know who I am? It asked as it gestured to itself. Its grin turned into a frown when Percy shook his head in the negative, a shame, but worry not. I shall rectify that mistake soon enough. It raised its hand, its long fingers turning into a long blade, and stabbed Percy in the stomach. Ugh. Percy gasped, blood spilling out of his mouth as he fell to his knees. What are you doing? His hands were gripped on the blade in his chest as he tried to remove it. Don't bother to try and remove it. It's already fused to your body. The creature stated with a shake of its head, soon, your body will be my vessel into this new world. Why? The demigod asked with a glare, why are you doing this to me? He roared. His hand slowly turning white. The white shadow shook its head, I'm afraid that you won't live long enough for me to explain my reasons, but know that it is for a good cause. A smile made its way onto the creature's lips, now sleep. Percy's head fell as he gazed at his arms, his entirely white arms. Answer this. What is happening to me? What is this white stuff? He could feel it creeping up his arms, his body slowly being converted into whatever the substance was. It's just the very matter that the universe is made of. The creature grinned, its teeth visibly sharp. Consider yourself privileged. You will know the truth. That was the last thing Percy heard, as the strange substance had covered his ears and started crawling up his neck. Whatever happens you will not win. It had now covered his mouth, making it impossible for him to speak. As the substance crawled to his eyes, he saw the creature give him a lazy salute before everything went white. As Percy opened his eyes, he saw 11 weapons pointed at his body. Ugh guys. Someone mind explaining to me why I have weapons shoved in my face? As he looked around, he noticed the grim looks on everyone's faces, Dionysus included. Ah, I see. You've noticed it, haven't you? A small chuckle escaped his lips as he ran a hand through his hair. I had hoped to keep this a secret, but I guess I was a bit too slow. Where is he? Poseidon demanded as he zoomed towards Percy, his trident pressing against his Adam's apple. Where is my son? What have you done with him? The earth shook under his powerful voice. Your son? The boy asked, feigning shock as he stared into the sea god's eyes. I find that highly unlikely. I've seen his memories, and while he may think of you as his father, he is most definitely not your son. He finished the last part with a strong glare, his emerald eyes burning in silent anger. His hands grabbed the trident pressed against his neck and pushed it off, although with a bit of strain. Where were you when he had skinned his knee for the first time? Where were you when Gabriel Ugliano beat Perseus into unconsciousness? Why didn't you visit him? Zeus frowned as he stood up, his lightning bolt still pointed at Percy. He could not. The ancient laws forbid such actions. The boy snorted, his hair turning a stark white. Laws? You claim to follow them, yes. Seeing them nod, he continued, then please explain to me why you are ignoring all the other ones. Poseidon growled as he pushed back with all his might, his muscles visibly straining. Do not change the subject. What have you done with my son? Percy rolled his eyes, this was going to take forever. Fine. Since you seem so adamant about knowing I absorbed him. Wait, that's not right. I froze his soul, for a lack of better words, and took his body for my own. Poseidon staggered back, his trident dropping out of his hand. Why? Why did you do that? He demanded as he started to take his true form, a green glow emerging from his body. I'll kill you myself. Do you even know who or what I am? Percy asked as he stared at the god in front of him. I am the universe, the world. Some have called me God. I am all and I am you. You all may call me Truth. Apollo raised his hand, a frown on his face as he stared at the now named Truth. When you say God, do you mean the same one from the Bible? If so, then they would all be screwed. A smile made its way onto Truth's lips as he pointed at the sun god. You can see it, can't you? My very existence cannot be denied because I am Truth itself. I know, Apollo admitted, his head bowed as he looked away from the vastly superior being. These laws, what are they? Truth made to answer but was forced to dodge when he noticed Poseidon barreling towards him, ready to smash his body. Now that's just rude. I don't want to harm you, but if you don't stop, I will have to resort to violence. The sea god snarled at him, too far gone into his anger to be able to use reason. You killed my son. I'll kill you myself, you bastard. Poseidon dug his fingers into the ground and pulled. All of Olympus shook as he ripped out a piece of the ground, ready to smash Truth's head in. Before he could throw it though, Truth slammed the ground with his two hands and willed dozens of marble swords to grow out of the ground and surround the god. Bro, that at your own peril, he warned his host body's father, but know that if you do, you will suffer for it. He sent a warning glance to all of the other deities, daring them to make a move. Each one of those blades is pointed at a vital organ. If you even step forward, I will skewer you on them. It won't kill you, being gods and all that, but it sure as hell will cause you untold agony. With a clap of his hands, the damage done to the room was undone, leaving it in a pristine condition, except for the hundreds of swords sticking out of the ground. Looking back at Poseidon, he sighed. I'm sorry for your loss. Well, not really, but the point stands. Your son was the only suitable host I could find, everyone else would have just burned up from my presence alone. Poseidon only glared at him, refusing to speak to the man that robbed him of his son. Zeus rolled his eyes, not really broken about the sea spawn's death. Let's step away from this issue for a minute and focus on your reason for being here. Truth nodded, his eyes locked onto a pair of mismatched one. Okay. I'll be blunt. When the universe was made, a careful balance was formed. You guys have been mucking that up. That needs to stop, like right now. Artemis blinked, her hands crossed under her breasts as she regarded Truth. I don't think I understand. I mean, we've taken great care to keep things in balance, maybe a few reckless moves here and there, but nothing truly dangerous. Truth shook his head. I know that, well, at least when it comes to you. He gestured to Athena, but what about her? How do you explain Arachne, Medusa? He sighed as he pinched the bridge of his nose. Making such drastic changes requires a price, one that she did not pay. Athena frowned. Hold on a sec. She raised her hands into the air. Are we really going to allow him to question our actions? I mean, he says he's God, but what proof do we have of that claim? Hermes laughed. Did you not see what he just did? He stopped Poseidon without even punching him, something that you will never be able to do, might I add. He ignored the icy glare that he had received. I'm curious, though. What do we do now? If there is a price to pay, what is it? Truth rubbed his chin and thought, his green eyes gazing at the ceiling. I'm in a good mood, so I'll just have you read a book and hopefully learn a few lessons. He nodded his head. That would work. And what happens if we don't learn those lessons? Zeus asked carefully. Truth waved off his question. Don't worry about it. I'll probably just kill you all, except for Apollo and Artemis cause they're important, and replace you with better versions of yourselves. Horror crept up Zeus's face as he registered what Truth had just said. Before he could try anything, though, Truth clapped his hands and the world shifted once more. Truth smiled as he appeared in a familiar location, the same wide expanse that he had met Percy in. He was currently looking into a mirror, gazing at his new body, a small smile on his face. Yup, who's sexy and knows it? Me, that's who. He crooned into the mirror as he gazed at the rock-hard abs that he now possessed. His hair was a pale white, looking like freshly fallen snow, whilst his eyes were ruby red, like fresh blood. I'm a handsome motherfucker, and they'll all know it. Getting tired of admiring himself, he looked into his closet looking for something to wear. Pulling out a yellow shirt, he blanched. Looks like someone threw up. I am so not wearing that. Tossing it to the side, he smiled as he pulled out a white shirt with golden cuffs. Now that style. Snapping his fingers, he watched as the shirt dematerialized and reappeared on his body. Fits perfectly. Raising his hands to his mouth, he looked up to the sky. Thank you, Edna. His only response was a rock, with a small note attached to it, hitting his head. Nursing his new bump, he picked up the note and smiled. For the readers, no capes. Good old Edna. She knows me so well. He threw the rock away and put the note in his shirt pocket. Now what else am I missing? Looking around, he noticed that the deities of Olympus were standing behind him, an awkward look on their faces. Sorry about that. I kind of forget you were there. Zeus's left eyebrow twitched, he did not like being ignored. Yes, well, we don't like being ignored. And I don't like having my rules broken. Truth roared, silencing Zeus's complaint, so do me a favor and shut up. I don't have time to deal with ignorant gods. Zeus balked in rage, but a withering glare from Hades shut him up. Truth's eyes were filled with untold fury. I don't care who you think you are. In my eyes, you are nothing more than impudent children with more power than you should have. He ignored the glare he received. I will be fixing that. How? Apollo asked, his eyes glowing golden as he sized up Truth. How do you plan to fix us? If you haven't noticed, we're immortal. We cannot die. We have power unfathomable to mere mortal minds. He paused as he considered his next set of words. How can you fix something that doesn't want to be fixed? Truth laughed as if he had just heard the funniest thing in the world. Simple. I'm going to make you realize that you're not as powerful as you make yourself out to be. That there are beings out there in the great beyond that can put you all to shame. Closing his eyes, he smiled. Once I'm done, you'll want to change. Ares snorted, his fiery eyes glaring at Truth. Challenge accepted. But once this is all done, I'll break you like the twig you are. If you say so, Truth replied in a sing-song voice, his red eyes fluttering in mock shyness, but when you do, please be gentle. Shaking his head, he smiled ruefully, but on a serious note, I need you guys to change into something a bit more appropriate. Apollo frowned, what's wrong with what we're wearing? He happened to like his shorts and shirt. Truth gasped, his hands resting on his chest, as he gazed at Apollo. Dear boy, you have no idea as to what good tastes are, do you? Shorts. That was so last year. Now it's all about suits and ties. Clasping his hands together, a golden suit formed in front of the sun god. Here, try this on. Fine, Apollo grumbled as he grabbed the clothes. Is there anywhere I can change of? Something tells me that I won't like the results if I use my powers to make the clothes appear on my body. He sighed when he saw Truth nod his head. I thought so. Smart lad. With a snap of his fingers, Truth willed a portal to appear in front of Apollo. If you go through there, you will appear in a small pocket dimension that contains everything you could ever need. Apollo said nothing as he walked through it, his body disappearing in a flicker of golden light. Truth clapped his hands excitedly as he gazed at the rest of the deities. Now for the rest of you. With another snap of his fingers, 11 more portal appeared. Well, just go on in. Maybe you'll find something you might enjoy. The lewd smirk on his face alerted them to the fact that he was thinking something on the X-rated side. The disgust of Hera's face was visible, mostly because of her scrunched-up nose. I had thought that someone of your stature would be more mature than to make sex jokes, but I guess I was wrong. Truth rolled his eyes. Don't get your panties in a twist, Grandma. He disappeared from their side and reappeared right under Hera's chin. Or you might just turn into a stick in the mud. He gently flicked her chin. You're jewel in this boring world, and I would hate to see that tarnished by your inability to have fun. Hera did nothing, although there was the barest of blushes on her cheeks as she stared at Truth. Don't say such things if you don't want to get smote. She pointed toward Zeus, who was turning red in rage. I guess you're right. Truth raised his hands in surrender, choosing to step a few feet away from the Queen of Olympus. Go and enjoy yourself. Hera did just that, whilst Zeus glared at Truth, his teeth gnashing in anger. Never speak to my wife again. Do you understand me? As you say. She is your wife, and I shall not steal her from you. Truth smiled at Zeus, not at all threatened by the king of Olympus, but know this, I do not respond well to threats. He finished with a strong glare, his red eyes glowing brightly. With a snap of his fingers, Zeus was pushed through the portal that was behind him. That should teach you a lesson. Looking back, he noticed that only Athena and Artemis remained, the rest having left during his conversation with Zeus and Hera. So do you guys need anything, or are you just here to stare at my magnificent body? He asked, his eyebrows wiggling suggestively. Athena rolled her eyes before leaving through the portal beside her. I guess that answers that for Athena. What about you, my virgin goddess? Truth asked, interested as to why Artemis was still there. Artemis rolled her eyes, but she couldn't help the smile that formed on her lips as she gazed at the strange being in front of her. No, I'll be going now. She paused as she turned away, her long black hair swaying in the cool breeze that had suddenly formed. You are a strange one, a mystery to my senses. You've explained who you are to us, but I don't think we'll ever be able to accept that as the truth. As she wasn't looking at Truth, she didn't get to see the small smile on his face. It is your choice if you choose to accept it, but I am glad that you told me this. It shows that you are far more level-headed than most people, deities included, that I've met. Artemis nodded, slightly flattered by Truth's praise, before walking through a portal. As her body disappeared in a silver light, Truth released a small sigh as he fell into the seat that had formed behind him. Now for the waiting game. Annabeth Chase, chief architect of Olympus, sighed as she sat in the Athena cabin, her long blonde hair a mess as she gazed at the paper in front of her. Despite putting as much effort as she could into focusing on the paper, she could not. Her worry for Percy won out in the end. With a growl, she crumpled up the paper and threw it into the garbage. "Come back to me soon, Percy." She buried her head into her hands as she silently thought about her boyfriend, the only sign of her life being the constant rising of her back, indicating that she was still breathing. "I'm sorry," a new voice startled Annabeth, "but he won't be coming back." Annabeth blinked as she raised her head to gaze at the figure in front of her. "Excuse me?" Annabeth asked, disbelief evident in her voice. "Who gave you the right to decide if he comes back or not?" Her face was narrowed into a scowl as she tried to get a good glimpse at the person who was talking to her. "No one," the person admitted. Why did the voice sound so familiar to Annabeth, but, on the other hand, I should know. I was the one to essentially kill him. A strangled cry escaped Annabeth's lips as she finally got a good look at the person. "No. That's impossible. He promised me that he would come back." The ruby eyes of Percy gazed uninterestedly at the young demi-goddess, and in a way, he has. "This body, which was once his, has returned to you." A sigh escaped his lips when Annabeth only glared daggers at him. "Come. All will be explained in due time, but know that his body was the only one that could contain my very essence." With his part said, he grabbed onto Annabeth's arm. "Just so you know, my name is Truth." They disappeared in a flash of white light. Annabeth felt like she was going to throw up as she fell to her knees. What was that?" she demanded as she turned her towards Truth, her eyes containing the pits of Tartarus within them. Truth rolled his eyes. "Don't be such a wimp. I only dematerialized your body and remade you at this location." What was it with people being so unreasonably expressive? If everyone was going to be like this, he might as well just have destroyed the entire human race and been done with it. Annabeth scowled at him as she got up, her strength slowly coming back to her. Before she said anything, though, she looked at her surroundings. "What is this place?" "This?" Truth asked for confirmation, knowing very well that was what she was referring to. Getting a nod, he answered, "It's nothing much, just my personal dimension." Clasping his hands together, a seat emerged behind Annabeth. "Take a seat." Once she did, he continued, "Now I assume you have a lot of questions, so I'll do my best to answer them all, though I can't promise that you'll like them." Annabeth thought about the questions that she wanted to ask him, most of them concerning getting Percy back. "Why? Why do you need a vessel into this world?" Truth paused as he looked to one of the 12 portals that floated around them. "That is a very good question, one that I don't have the time to explain fully, but it all pertains to the Olympians." The frown on his face indicated to Annabeth that he wasn't happy. They've been mucking around with the rules with absolutely no regard for the consequences of their actions. He made a wishy-washy motion with his right hand. "Now not all of them are to blame, but some of them, like your mother, are guilty of this to the highest degree." Annabeth shook her head in vehement denial. "My mother would never do such a thing." Truth raised an eyebrow in mock curiosity. "Really? Then please explain to me how Medusa and Arachne came to be." When Annabeth could not comply with his demand, he snorted, "So eager to come to your mother's defense, and yet you can't even come up with a good excuse." Annabeth bristled but refrained from lashing out. It had become apparent to her that Truth was someone that she did not want as an enemy. "My mother has her reasons for everything, even if it is morally questionable." "You still defend her honor, that is commendable." Truth praised her, the barest of smiles tugging at his lips. "Come. I wish for you to join the Olympians as they read a story, although it might be a TV show instead." "Still deciding on that, but either way, I'm certain that you will enjoy it." Annabeth said nothing, upset beyond belief with Truth. Fine, her gray eyes were narrowed in determination as she gazed into his red ones. "But I won't give up on getting Percy back." "If you say so." Truth crossed his hands, his eyes gazing into one of the portals that stood to the side. "They should be done soon. I really should change this place." He looked at Annabeth. "Close your eyes, please." Annabeth did so. She suspected that it would be bad for her health if she didn't follow his instructions. "Okay, they're closed." Truth scrutinized her for a few seconds. He didn't want her to die after all. "Okay." With a snap of his fingers, the entire dimension changed into that of a grand theater from the 18th century. "You can open your eyes again." Doing so, Annabeth was surprised to see that she was in a theater. She stared at Truth, shock evident on her face. "Just who are you exactly?" "I am the universe, the world. Some have called me God. I am all and I am you." He replied in a bored tone. He never did like revealing his identity to mortals. The churches had a tendency of calling him a heretic. Annabeth highly doubted it, but chose not to comment on it. "So when is this thing going to start?" "Now." Truth grinned at her, "So sit back and enjoy the show." With a snap of his fingers, the portals that floated around them changed into doors, each a different color to represent the Olympians. It wasn't long before everyone started returning, Zeus being the first. Truth gazed at them with the smallest semblance of a smile, his eyes lingering on Artemis lightly. "Welcome back, my friends. Well, it hasn't been long, I feel that we have gotten to know each other quite well." He paused as he saw everyone staring at the demi-goddess next to him. "Ah, you are wondering about Annabeth, aren't you?" Hermes nodded, a concerned look on his face. "Yeah, does she know about Percy?" He dragged his thumb against his throat to indicate what he was talking about. Truth nodded his head. "Yeah, she knows, and as you can probably imagine, she isn't very happy about the fact." He spared a glance to said demi-goddess and quickly turned away when he saw her murderous eyes, "But she is here for a reason." Athena frowned as she stepped forward, concerned by the tears that streamed down her eyes. "Are you okay, my daughter? She may have utterly despised Percy, being her rival's son and all that, but that didn't mean she wanted him to die, mostly because of the effect it would have on her daughter." "No," Annabeth replied quietly as she wiped her tears, her eyes burning with the need for revenge. "I'm not alright. I just learned that the love of my life is dead. How do you think I feel?" she asked with an accusatory glare. "But you must be jumping in joy, aren't you?" Her chuckle was mirthless as she stared into the grey eyes of her mother. "After all, that is what you wanted, right?" Slap. Annabeth blinked as she touched her cheek, feeling the spot her mother had just slapped. "Never say that again, Annabeth. I may not have liked him, but after seeing how he made you happy, I was ready to give him my blessing. I only want the best for you." Athena replied, tears coming to her own eyes as she looked at her daughter. Annabeth cried as her mother hugged her. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." As this was going on, Artemis was staring at Truth with a confused expression on her face. "What are you doing?" She could see lightning coursing down his arms and condensing into a small orb. Truth merely continued working on the orb, adding more power to it every few seconds that passed. "Has anyone ever told you that you look great?" he asked distractedly. "Absolutely fabulous, just give me a sec. I'll have this ready soon enough and then we can talk some more." As he was focused on the orb, he didn't see the flush on the moon goddess's face. "No," Artemis mumbled as she clenched the sides of her silver dress tightly. "Wait. What am I saying?" She shook her head so as to get rid of the blush on her face. "Don't distract me with your silver tongue." Truth shrugged, a small smile on his face as he continued working. "I wasn't lying, though. You really are beautiful, you just need someone to help bring it out." He winked at her as he took a mental picture. Her wavy black hair reached the small of her back with two long bangs framing her face. She wore absolutely no makeup and yet she was still as beautiful as her sisters, Aphrodite included. To top it off, she wore a silver dress that reached her ankles and hugged her body, with a slit on the left side that went all the way to her hip. The odd thing, though, was that there was only one sleeve whilst the other one looked like it was torn off. On her chest, she wore a small moon pendant. Artemis said nothing as she turned away from Truth and crossed her arms, refusing to give him any more fuel. Unfortunately, by doing this, she gave him a good glimpse of her butt, which, whilst not as big as Aphrodite, was still hugged by the dress. Truth chuckled to himself. "This was almost too easy. No one's ever flirted with you before, have they?" he asked while ignoring the furious glare from Apollo. He blinked as the orb stopped growing, before a bright grin split across his face. "Done." Taking the orb, he used his power to levitate it to the stage. "Okay everyone, take a seat, cause this show's just started." Athena nodded. "Come Annabeth, sit with me." She couldn't help but smile as she hugged Annabeth. "I promise you that everything will work out in the end." With her part said, she lifted her daughter up and carried her over to one of the chairs and sat down. "Now, we might as well enjoy this." Seeing her smile, Athena looked back at Truth and nodded. "We're ready." "Okay." Looking around, Truth made sure that everyone was ready. "It looks like we're ready to start." Clapping his hands, the lights dimmed leaving only the orb as a major source of light. "What we are going to see is another universe, one that is called hero or monster." "Sounds epic," Ares stated with a grin, his bloody red eyes glinting in excitement. "Hope there's a lot of blood." Truth said nothing, except roll his eyes, as the orb expanded into a flat surface. "Well, I wouldn't know about that, but I do know that it isn't a pretty story." Sort of. His only response was a laugh from Ares. "Now shush, it's starting. Some say my father was a hero. In the eyes of our people, he was nothing but. In the eyes of our enemy, he was a butcher. He cut down the strong, the weak, and everything in between in the name of peace." Athena blinked. "That's a rather interesting way to start a story." She tilted her head in thought as she mentally stored that tidbit of data away for later use. "Who cares?" Ares grinned. "I like this guy's father already." He ignored the glare he received from his aunt, Hestia. "The line between life and death is more intimate than we humans realize. They both accrue every day, sometimes at the same time. Hundreds of people are brought into this world and hundreds more leave it, and it's impossible to completely manipulate such things that are the unknown. We humanity spend our whole lives trying to do just that. Live. We cling to the idea that just existing is enough. Life and death, said to be polar opposites. I see them for what they are though. Mine. Hades stared at the screen, dumbstruck by what he just heard. Did he just say what I think he did? He barely managed to get the question out before a headache started forming. He did, Artemis muttered, her eyebrows twitching madly. The fact that there was a mortal who would make a claim on life, it irked her as a goddess of childbirth. She looked towards Truth. I'm not going to like this story, am I? Truth shrugged. Honestly, it depends on how uptight you are and how much you value female supremacy. He ignored her glare as he continued staring at the TV. Remember though, this is me teaching all of you a lesson. Everything you see is but a glimpse into another world. Annabeth snorted under her breath, trying not to be heard, as she looked at her mother. I think someone needs to teach him a lesson. Athena chuckled but said nothing as she hugged her daughter. My father, Namek is Minato. Hero or monster? Sometimes, the world doesn't need another hero. At least someone gets it. Dionysus drawled out with a bored look on his face. A sneer made its way on his face. You heroes are all the same, refusing to take a life. How can you expect to protect what is precious when you can't even be certain that your enemies won't come back? Annabeth frowned, because if we did kill we wouldn't be any better than them. She denied vehemently. The god of madness scoffed, keep on telling yourself that. Sometimes, what it needs is a monster. It doesn't, Artemis denied with a shake of her head, there are enough of them already in this world, and others. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I am a monster. Dionysus smiled slightly, maybe this mortal won't be so bad. He turned towards Annabeth, a pointed look on his face, and maybe you will learn that your way is not the only one. Annabeth made to retort, but a look from her mother shut her up. Truth put his index finger to his lips. SHH, the show is starting, for real, so be quiet. They watched as the scene changed. The 6-year-old Uzumaki Naruto lay on his back in the cold dank alleyway that his attackers left him in not 5 minutes ago. Wait, Apollo put up his hand to stop the show. Are you telling me that someone attacked a child and left him there? He was angry, there was no doubt in anyone's mind as he watched the image in front of him. Yes, Hestia murmured, horrified by the scene on the screen. The small blue-eyed blonde looked so much like Zeus that it was scary. How could someone do something like that? Artemis crossed her arms. She had seen this scenario before, whether they be girls or boys, only scum can do something like that. Well, I wouldn't use those exact words, Hera said with a sneer on her beautiful face. I agree with you. People like that don't deserve to live. He was beaten and broken, so much so that his body felt numb. Good. It was better if he couldn't feel the pain right now. He could somewhat hear the faint noises that the still-going celebration was making in the distance, mocking him with its cheery attitude, completely ignorant of his suffering. Hermes breathed in deeply, doing everything in his power to contain the rage he felt. Those fuckers, if I ever learn who did that, I won't hesitate to kill them. Dead in line, Apollo snarled, his body erupting in golden flames as he clenched his fists tightly. If you're lucky, I just might leave you an arm when I'm through with them. Hestia frowned at the two young gods. I understand your anger, but please don't lower yourself to their levels. Apollo and Hermes said nothing, too deep into their anger to care about what their aunt said. After a random man walked right into the young blonde, said man decided, after noticing who it was he bumped into, that he was going to relieve some pent-up stress on the village pariah. At some time during the beating others began to join in. Before it ended there seemed to be at least 10 of them. One boy, one child against 10 adults, an entire village, an entire world. Annabeth frowned, tears prickling at the corner of her eyes. He's only 6 years old, she couldn't find the words to describe how she felt. Compared to him, she lived a great life. It's okay, Annabeth. Athena comforted her daughter, her arms wrapped around her shoulders, it's bound to get better. Annabeth nodded, her eyes brightening up slightly as she rubbed her eyes dry. Yet, the small smile on his face never faded, even as the tears rolled down his cheeks to meet the damp ground. It had rained the day before, he had remembered. He wondered if, hadn't the member of the zoo not shown up, would they have stopped like they did? Would they have kept going until he no longer drew breath? He was curious, was all. Artemis frowned, no, they would have continued. It's just how humans are, she paused, although I am curious about this zoo, they must have quite the power if they are able to stop a mob. I'm surprised that the boy can smile after what he's gone through, Hated murmured, surprise evident on his face. I know that I wouldn't be smiling, actually I would be planning my revenge on all of them. Apollo scoffed, you and me both. His blue eyes were narrowed in anger. He always could feel what others felt. He could feel the pain and rage they experienced when they caught sight of him. Hestia gasped, that's awful. How can a 6-year-old deal with all that hatred? Her brown eyes revealed the despair she felt. She looked towards Annabeth. Annabeth, this is a power that no mortal should have, a young child nonetheless. The demigoddess nodded, her eyes locked onto the image of the smiling boy. That kind of power must be a curse. To be surrounded by people that hated your guts, I don't think anyone could handle that. Apollo waved his hand in wishy-washy motion, it depends on the circumstances, the most important one being the state of the people. Just like how he knew they weren't angry at him, but at the thing inside of him. That never stopped them from projecting their anger on his young body though. Did they ever notice that he never resisted? I don't know what to say. The fact that they take their anger on an innocent boy, my opinion of the opposite sex, has just plummeted even more. Artemis announced, her silver eyes narrowed in a glare. How could someone be so heartless? Athena scoffed, you and me, you and me. He didn't understand what exactly he housed in his gut, but he was sure that it was the ire of the village. He'd heard the stories of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the demon that attacked the village a few years ago. Ah, now I understand. They lost people in that attack, maybe friends and family. Zhu stated after thinking about it, all the pieces were coming together, though it doesn't excuse the people from what they've done. Truth smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. I'm glad you agree. There are some things that just cannot be forgiven. Artemis smiled at him, I agree. He put two and two together and figured the red-hot and oh so angry feeling in his gut was the supposed destruction incarnate. Hermes winced, that was not good, this is just getting worse, and worse isn't it? None replied to him, as they too did not have an answer to that question. He understood the feeling he found completely. Loneliness. Naruto had been all alone since he was born. No parents, no friends, nothing. It was a nightmare, except he couldn't wake up. He was stuck. It never kept him down though, because with his innate ability to feel those around him also came the ability to understand them completely. And when you can understand someone completely, you can't help but love them. And Naruto did, he loved his village, his people, with his entire being. Escha smiled, some of the tension leaving the room, I wholeheartedly agree. When you can understand others that well, that deeply, you can find it deep within yourself to forgive them, even if they have done something against you. Truth nodded, and yet it is a mortal that has this power, not a deity. He looked at them, a pointed look on his face. He could connect to others on such a level that if someone paid even a sliver of attention to him, they would realize that the boy was capable of feats no other human was able to perform. He, in the simplest way to put it, was doing the impossible, the unthinkable, the amazing. That's not including his amazing empathy, right? Apollo asked sarcastically. He wasn't in a good mood right now, and when he wasn't in a good mood, he got sarcastic. To connect and understand another's feelings and intentions to such a degree that you could practically understand what the other was thinking was as scary as it was incredible. And that was only the beginning of what Naruto could do with his natural talents. Compared to his other skillset, the empathy was just a small drop in a very large ocean. Though Apollo blinked, color me intrigued. With you, that's not very hard to do, Artemis smirked, her eyes glinting with mischief. She nearly laughed when Apollo stuck out his tongue. He had never used his other ability on another living being before, but he knew. The outcome would be terrifyingly effective. Sighing to himself, the little Uzumaki finally stood, already healed of the beating he had received. If his pain caused others joy, even if only slightly, then he would take it. He was the only person who understood the pain of each individual as much as they themselves did, so it just stood to be true that he would be the only one who could handle their anger. He could and would take it all, the pain, like it was his life's mission. He would do that for his precious village. I'll say this once again, Hades started, he's a better person than me, despite the fact that he is only a child. The fact that he would suffer so that others wouldn't, it warmed his cold heart. I am certain that if he were to die right now he would make it to Elysium. Escha smiled, despite disliking the idea that a child should die, I agree. He is a pure soul in a lawless world. There is no doubt in my mind that he is capable of making it to Elysium, maybe even the Isles of Blessed, if he tries for rebirth 3 times. Poseidon was silent, still reeling from his son's death, there was a small smile on his face. Dusting off the dirt that now occupied his clothes, Naruto began to walk, where to even he did not know. He felt drawn to something the moment he first stood. Like something, no, someone was calling out for help, calling out for him. They were scared, terrified, and helpless against whatever it was causing their intense fear. It was so strong that it hurt his heart, his soul and whole self. Empathy is a double-edged sword. But in situations like this it is a valuable gift. Apollo said in a grim tone, I just hope he can get to the person in time. He needed to get to them quickly. He decided to try out an idea he had a few days ago. With the use of his other ability, he thought that it would be possible to run faster than he usually was capable of. Much faster. Pulling in that beautifully bright and unbelievably powerful essence that was all around him, always roaming the world, or was it the world itself? He flooded his body with it to the spilling point. That's not something that a mortal should be able to do. Athena denied, her rational mind telling her that it was impossible. She could see with her own eyes the golden energy enter Naruto, his own body glowing like a beacon. And yet, we are seeing it happen before our very eyes, Truth pointed out, a grin on his face. He was now brimming with the unnamed and unknown energy, and he began directing it to his legs. Just like he had thought, his speed doubled. Not enough. He wasn't fast enough, not yet. He forced even more of the energy into his legs, his speed tripling. More. He repeated the process again. His speed quadrupled. Not yet. His speed quintupled. So this energy is somehow increasing his own natural abilities. Apollo mused to himself. He sneaked a peek at Hermes, the fastest god in all of Olympus. How fast do you think he's going? Hermes closed his eyes in thought, the calculations running through his mind. Honestly, I'm not certain. Kids that young don't normally start running that fast until they're like 11. It's a good thing I know, then, Truth announced, and you are right, Hermes. A child shouldn't be running that fast at such a young age. He looked at Apollo, but to answer your question, he is currently running at 3,125 miles per hour. He let that statement sink in. Shock rang throughout the theater. That's impossible. No mortal should be capable of running that fast. Truth gazed at Artemis. Do remember, please, that this is another world. The rules are far different there than they are here. He was so fast everything seemed to be in slow motion. He was no longer visible to the human eye, or any eye for that matter. That's what he thinks, Hermes grinned, a playful smirk on his face. He paused as a thought entered his head and the author's. Truth, if he ever comes here I want to race him. Truth smirked. I thought you might, which is why I have a plan for that very reason. It might take a while, but I should be able to do something. Zeus paled 2 speed demons in the halls of Olympus. It would be one of his worst nightmares fulfilled. He suddenly came to a complete halt, like he wasn't traveling fast enough to clear the whole village in seconds. He was directly in the path of someone he had never met or felt in his village before now. He was in a different uniform than the shinobi of his village, and his forehead protector was not of the leaf as well. Athena paused. The word shinobi was strangely familiar. Closing her eyes, she rummaged through her mind palace, looking for anything pertaining to the word shinobi. She opened her eyes after a few seconds, having found the information she needed. A shinobi is an assassin, or ninja, who works from the shadows. They are masters of espionage, rivaled only by the samurai. Truth nodded. That's the basic gist of things, although, in that world, they do more than just kill. If the bidder pays enough, they will clean your garden for you. Aphrodite stifled a laugh as she imagined men in black clothing pulling weeds out of the ground. But the foreign energy flowing through his body, Naruto could see perfectly in the dark. The man had white bandages wrapped around the top part of his head, his hit eye slanted on his face, completely covering his right eye from the world, with a black piece of string holding it all together. He had brown hair, if his brown facial hair was anything to go by. And he was tall, a lot taller than the blonde. Ugh, that guy totally reeks of suspicion, Hermes stated as he watched the image, his eyes sharp. Naruto immediately recognized a small form that was held in the man's left arm as the person he felt. He could still feel their fear even now. He wanted to change that immediately. The man looked down on the small boy in front of him and snarled, out of my way, aunt. The head ninja of Kumo barked. Naruto was silent for a moment, too angry to even move his body. He had felt the unknown man when he arrived and he now knew his intentions. He was taking what was not his to take. He was condemning an innocent and what he now knew gentlest girl he'd ever felt to a life of servitude and abuse. Artemis felt the fury within her grow as she watched the image. What? I'll kill that bastard. She didn't need to be a genius, not that she wasn't, to know what the man wanted. Hera too felt angry, but she kept her fury contained. Monsters, all of them are monsters. A young girl, taken to be breeding stock. What do they hope to gain from this? Truth rolled his eyes. If you can stay quiet for a few seconds, you'll find out. Artemis and Hera rolled their eyes but stayed quiet. He knew the man thought of her as nothing more than a pawn, a means of reproducing powerful and, if her eyes were anything to go by, special shinobi. Zeus rubbed his beard in thought, so her eyes have some special ability or something like that. It would explain why the man kidnapped the girl. Just wait and see, please. Truth was now getting annoyed by all the interruptions. Naruto truly despised this man. He was the scum of this earth. You and me, Artemis muttered to herself, too low for anyone to hear except Truth. Something inside Naruto clicked. He knew what he had to do. He could now feel and understand himself. He knew what he was now. The dark-skinned shinobi vaulted over the child in front of him, knowing that time was against him. He had no time to deal with someone who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He kept running, making decent distance, until he was stopped once more. Again, the blonde-haired boy suddenly flashed in front of him, almost too fast for him to react to. In the back of his mind, he was worried just how strange it was for someone so young to be so fast. He snarled and went to grab a kunai from his pouch to dispense with the nuisance. That's when he felt it. Naruto's hand raised into the air, ignoring the man's attempt to bring out a weapon, and began to do the impossible. The world, which was the only way he could describe it, began to twist and turn, producing the same energy that was currently occupying his body. However, now it was different, more refined, sharper, and tangible. From the very air itself, bright gold in the same color as his eyes particles began to appear, floating in the sky above him. Apollo shook his head in absolute disbelief. That should be impossible. What he's doing, the manipulation of the Earth's natural energy, should not be feasible, and yet we are seeing it happen before our very eyes. For the first time, in a very long time, Apollo did not know what to say. Demeter frowned, her golden eyes staring at the paused image. Even I can't do something like that, and I doubt Gaia can as well. Truth smiled, this is why I am showing you this world. I'm proving a point by doing this. It's up to you guys to figure out what it is. With a flick of his wrist, the particle stirred, slowly rotating, grinding itself in a circular motion, enthusiastically obeying its master's whims. The grizzled man's eyes widened, he didn't exactly know what was happening, but he was able to understand that it wasn't all that good for his health. It was supposed to be dark out, being well past sundown, but with the golden matter that was flying around, the sky was ablaze in a molten gold fury. It briefly passed through the head ninja's mind that, for a moment, it had looked like the heavens themselves opened up to bring forth their wrath on him. It does look like that, doesn't it? Hermes tilted his head in thought, it honestly reminded me of the old days when we would use our power to inspire fear in the mortals below us. Ares sighed in bliss, those were the good old days. Yeah, he looked at Zeus, a frown on his face. If it wasn't for him, we could still be doing that. But no, we have to hide from the mortals. Zeus rolled his eyes, a small sigh escaping his lips as he gazed into the ruby eyes of his warmongering son. Ares, do me a favor and shut up. It was the most terrifyingly beautiful thing the seasoned Jonin had ever seen. Naruto's hand shot open, spreading his fingers in the air. That's when the particles took form, mimicking his right arm, the spread fingers and all, just in a much larger proportion. It looked like it was the right hand of God more than a small child's anger. Naruto gave one more soul-piercing glare at the man, their eyes meeting for mere seconds. In those chaste moments, the head ninja had thought the boy could actually see his soul for what it was. Tainted. He had never felt sheer terror like this before. Good. Artemis nodded her head, a vicious grin on her face. Apollo scooted away from his sister, there was no way he was sitting next to her when she was like that. So why was it so serene? For a moment, the Kumo-nin wondered why he wasn't moving, why he wasn't cutting this strange child's throat and vanishing into the night. And then he knew, with a strange detached realization that he couldn't. Whatever the thing in the sky was, it demanded all his attention. Not even the fear of being caught by the Konoha shinobi could spur him. The Uzumaki could feel the familiar presence of who he guessed was the girl's father. Familiar as in he had felt the man before. He had by now memorized all of Konoha's citizens. He nodded at the man, and the older Hyuga wasted no time to leap forward and scoop his daughter in his arms. Once he leapt back out of the way, Naruto had no reason to wait anymore. Good. End his existence like the ant he is, Artemis grinned, her teeth glinting in the light. Apollo looked to Hermes, the fear evident on his face. Help me. Hermes shrugged his shoulders, not willing to incur Artemis's wrath. Sorry bro, you're on your own. I'm screwed, Apollo whispered. In the back of his head he knew he was being watched, he could recognize Hokageji's presence anywhere, and he was always with members of the zoo, so they too he was very familiar with. Especially the lazy-feeling one, he was the blonde's favorite. That didn't matter now though. All that mattered at this very moment was to rid the world of this disgusting man. Like an enraged god bringing down his divine judgment, Naruto clenched his hand in a fist while slamming it down into the ground at his feet, cracking a large portion of it. He unleashed all his anger with a monstrous shout, something that sounded more animal than human. Aya. In a blink of an eye, the gold hand-like structure fell to the earth right above the would-be kidnapper from Kumo, with earth-shattering might. All the shinobi present actually had a hard time withstanding the blast, using a large amount of chakra just to stay in place and upright. The power behind the attack had to be equivalent to 20 or 30 explosive tags going off at once. It was a terrifying sight. It is done, Hestia said, she never liked seeing a life being snuffed out, the boy is something else, and I feel pity for anyone who gets on his bad side. Zeus nodded, upset that the man did not pay for his crimes like he should have, indeed. Those villagers are lucky that Naruto loves them so much. When the incredible golden light finally faded away, all that was left was a deep scar in the earth. A very deep scar. Apollo rested his hands behind his head, one that will serve as a reminder for a very long time to come. His twin sister nodded, and hopefully they will be smart enough to not try what they did again. Naruto stood from his prone form, letting his fist unclench as he did so. No one said a word, no one moved a muscle, and everyone tried to hold their breath. Silence reigned supreme in the now very large street as everyone just stared at the boy in disbelief. Not only did the demon child completely and utterly overpower and decimate the head ninja of Kumagakure no Sado, but he did it with ease, without the help of his charge, and for the sake of another Konoha citizen. It was incredible, it was amazing, and it was unbelievable. Hopefully they feel regret about how they treated him, Hestia smiled light, her war aura warming the room. Truth scoffed, don't count on it. Humans have a tendency to forget such amazing events. Everyone tensed as the village pariah moved forward towards the Hyuga clan head and heiress. When he was standing right next to the man, Naruto gave him a gentle and warm smile, already able to feel the man's gratitude and unafraid feelings. That made Naruto happy, someone appreciated him. Is she okay, mister? Naruto asked softly, his gentle smile never leaving his face. Hyuga Hiashi gave a smile himself, something not many were privileged to see ever, and nodded. It would seem so. I have you to thank for that, Naruto-san. The Hyuga man replied, still holding his firstborn. I am forever in your debt. Naruto shook his head. I'm just glad she's okay. Hiashi nodded. As am I. Sarutobi Hiruzen landed next to Naruto and gave the boy a questioning look. We need to talk, Naruto-kun. Were the only words that left the aged Hokage's mouth before he sunshined, body flickered away, taking the blonde with him. Wait, Annabeth started, humans in that world have abilities like Naruto as well. If so, then that meant that the humans, in that world, were far more different than they had originally thought. Kind of, Truth did a wishy-washy motion, they have their abilities, but Naruto's is unique even compared to those. Don't worry about that, though. He gestured back to the screen, just enjoy it while you can. As Naruto sat in the chair across the Hokage in the man's office, he felt no fear. He already knew what the man was going to ask. And he was going to answer with a smile, because he knew he had done the right thing. He had saved an innocent, and was proud of it. That made him a hero. It does, Annabeth nodded with a smile on her face. He had taken another's life, and enjoyed it. That made him a monster. The smile on the demigoddess's face fell, oh that's not good. Whatever others saw him as didn't matter now though. He had found a way to feel. He felt alive. He felt free. He was finally awake. That sounds ominous enough. Apollo stated sarcastically, his face set into a lazy scowl, all you need now is some ominous music, and we'll be set. Hermes scoffed, don't be daft. You'll need more than music to make this scary. As the two started arguing, Hera rubbed her forehead in frustration, they're morons, all of them. A smile made its way on her face when she saw Artemis lap Apollo on the back of his head. Apollo rubbed his head, lil sis why did you do that? Tears prickled at the corner of his eyes as he looked at Artemis. Really? Artemis asked with a raised eyebrow, are you really asking me that question? Seeing him nod, she sighed, you're an idiot Apollo, you know that. Her only response was Apollo latching onto her, his arms wrapped around her shoulders. Truth smiled at the irritated look on Artemis's face, well that's one way to show brotherly affection. The goddess of hunting glared at him, daggers in her eyes, when he releases me, I'm going to kill you, you hear me Truth? She dragged her thumb across her own throat to emphasize the threat. Instead of being afraid, Truth merely waved off her threat, you're adorable you know that. Looking back at the TV, he smiled, you guys go on ahead and do what you want, I got to get the next part set up. Artemis sighed as she tried to push Apollo of her, get off me you big lug. As this was going on, Annabeth was staring at Truth, her eyes taking in his form. She just knew that this was going to be painful. Closing her eyes, she made a silent dedication to get Percy back. So Truth started as he looked at the group in front of him, who's ready to read the next chapter. He tilted his head to the side to avoid the silver sandal thrown at him, besides Artemis that is. Screw you. Artemis pouted as she crossed her arms, why did everyone have to be so mean to her? She glared at the snickering Apollo, it wasn't funny. Truth laughed at that, if you say so, but I'd like to get my own body before doing such a thing. Still, thanks for the offer. He ducked under the other silver sandal thrown at his face, sheesh learn to take a joke, little cub. The moon goddess glared at him, ignoring the snickering from the other deities of Olympus, shut up. Okay, I'm done now, Truth raised his hands in surrender, still, my first question stands, who here is ready to read the next chapter of Naruto's life? He grinned as he saw almost everyone raise their hands, even the adorable angry Artemis. There were only two that had not raised their hands, and that was Ares and Aphrodite. Truth shook his head in exasperation before snapping his finger twice, a giant wall separating the two from each other, now that I've got your attention, are you two ready for the next chapter? What the hell man? Ares glared hatefully at Truth, couldn't you see I was busy? Truth rolled his eyes, you mean trying to get into Aphrodite's panties? Then yeah, I could see that you were quite busy. He glanced to said goddesses and noticed how her dress left little to the imagination. He shook his head in irritation, look you can do what you do best later, but for now I want your attention on this story and nothing else. The god of war grumbled to himself in irritation, before grudgingly nodding his head in agreement, fine. Great, Truth clapped his hand together with a mocking smile, before glancing to the love goddess, and I assume you're ready as well, Aphrodite. Seeing her nod, he grinned, guess we can get started now then. But the snap of his fingers, the screen started streaming the next chapter of Hero or Monster. A deity is supposedly something divine and as such should be judged by their ability to create and heal. Yet, we mortals judge the potency of a god's strength by their power to destroy and end. It's silly, really, if you think about it. The more a god is monster-like, the more people pay attention to it. Truth. Apollo admitted as he raised his index finger into the air. He glared at the smirking Ares, "It's your fault that I'm not as popular as I used to be." Ares rolled his eyes, "It's not my fault that you're more interested in helping people, god of plagues, seriously, if Apollo only used that domain more often, then he would be just as respected and feared." "I enjoy helping people, unlike you who enjoy sending them to our dear uncle," Apollo responded with a frown. He glanced to said uncle and bowed his head in apology, "No offense meant." Hades snorted, "If you truly meant that, then you'd stop using my name as a curse. Such absurdity is favorable to a person like me though. I don't yet have the power to heal or create, but something I do have is the power to destroy. The power to end anything as I see fit." Ares grinned, "He'd make a good deity. Might even replace me if he were here with us." He started bouncing with excitement as he thought about all the things that Naruto could do as a war god, all the blood wars, destruction. It would be glorious, his grin widened to huge proportions, he'd be like a mini-me. Hestia frowned at her nephew, "You sicken me, Ares." Ares rolled his eyes, he didn't really care about what his peace-loving aunt thought or wanted, "Go blow yourself, granny. The only difference between me and a deity is simple. I know what I am. I am a monster." "Doubt it," Artemis mumbled to herself, "he's not shown himself to be anything more than kind and serious when needed." She paused when she felt something rest on her shoulder. A quick glance revealed it to be Truth resting his head on it. "What are you doing?" She was a hair's breadth away from punching him, consequences be damned. "Resting," he grinned at her, his white teeth glinting as he buried his head in the crook of her neck. "You smell nice by the way." He sniffed her hair, a dopey smile coming onto his face, kind of like a flower after a rain shower. He paused as the goddess's fist made contact with his face. The amount of force behind the punch obliterated half of his face, which didn't surprise him that much. He could already feel his massive aura healing the damage that he just took. To the rest of the group, though, it was a gruesome sight. They watched as his head rebuilt itself, tendons being reattached to each other. The next thing to reappear were the bones, but with obvious improvements. Although the deities could not see it, the new bones were laced with titanium, so as to reinforce them. As this was going on, Annabeth couldn't help but cry as she watched her boyfriend's head rebuild itself. Not only was it a gruesome sight, but it was also emotionally crushing for the female demigod. "Sleep," Athena muttered, her words laced with divine power as she wrapped her arms around her daughter's shoulders, "All will be alright." Seeing her daughter close her eyes, she frowned. Why couldn't anything be easy? "Holy shit." Truth mumbled, his hand soothing his reformed mouth, "You punch hard, you know that." He shook his head in amusement, "Still that won't be anywhere near close enough to kill this body. I've given it the power of adaptability, so try and be a bit more creative when you try to do me in." A dagger formed in his right hand, "Or else you won't even make it past this chapter. Remember, I'm here to teach you that includes punishing disobedient children." Zeus's eyebrow twitched in irritation, "We aren't children." Could have fooled me, Truth thought to himself. He pointed to the TV screen, "If you say so, still, the chapter is about to start again, so let's keep the commentary down to a minimum." So the zoo was nothing like what Naruto thought it would be. Most of the people were of the silent type, which was something he was okay with, having people ignore him for most of his life, which, in hindsight, was only 6 years, so he didn't really have all that much experience. Hestia frowned, he should never have to be okay with such a thing. He should be loved, adored, cared for, not hated or ostracized. Her soft hands were resting on her chest, right above her heart, as she tried to calm down the building anger she felt. Don't worry about it, auntie. That's just how humans are. They fear what they don't understand." Apollo smiled, his sky blue eyes shining with unbridled energy. After the little chat he and the Hokage had after he terminated the Kumo Shinobi, the old Sarutobi had decided that it would be best if Naruto put his abilities to good use. That came in the form of joining the zoo, or what he now knew to be the Anbu Black Ops. They were the Ansatsu Senjutsu Takushu Butai. The Special Assassination and Tactical Squad. Ares' jaw dropped in excitement, 6-year-old assassins. A scream of joy escaped his mouth, can this story not get any better? He looked at Truth with a pleading look, "Can I please, with a cherry on top, go there?" Truth tilted his head and thought, "If you pass the test and I think you've learned your lesson, I'll think about it." A small part of him, the souls within him that thrived on war and bloodshed, was excited about the prospect of dropping the war god in such a world. Can't believe they would actually allow someone to become an assassin at such a young age, the mental scarring alone could do untold amounts of damage, Athena muttered to herself softly. She made a point of ignoring Ares, that was a can of worms that she did not want to open. That night was the best thing that ever happened to the blonde. Until the last words spoken by his now senpai. Hermes shook his head in sadness, everything comes with a price, kid. You can't get the good without the bad, it's just how the world works. Flashback. Naruto could feel what the Hokage was feeling. Anxiety. He had seen a boy of only 6 years annihilate with extreme prejudice the head ninja of Kumo. The man was the ambassador of peace for the cloud and he was a strong jonin in his own right. The fact that Naruto had done away with him with what looked like ease made him very uneasy. Apollo released a low whistle, I feel sorry for the Hokage. Not only does he have a WMD sitting in front of him, but he now has to deal with the political repercussions from killing an ambassador from another country. But he wasn't the one to do the deed besides, I'm certain if he explained the situation, then they could work something out. Hestia titled her head in confusion. The sun god merely shook his head in amusement, you're too kind, you know that. He looked at his hands and clenched them, the death happened on his turf, so to speak. And since a leader is responsible for his people's actions well, I'm certain you get the idea. Athena nodded her head, I conclude with Apollo. Also, since the shinobi was the head ninja, it stands to reason that his government approved his attempted kidnapping of the young girl. Truth chuckled at seeing the frown on Hestia's face, that's the truth of the matter, Hestia. Zeus, who had been silent for most of the conversation, couldn't help but feel sorry for the Hokage. It reminded him of the situation with his own children, he glanced to Apollo and scowled. He still hadn't forgiven him for inventing solar eclipses. Mostly for the reason that Hades' powers were magnified tenfold for those short moments. For some reason, Hades couldn't help the smirk that formed on his face. Gigi, I can feel what you're thinking, just ask. I'll tell you the truth, honest. Naruto finally broke the awkward silence in the Hokage's office. The poor man was pacing the very moment they appeared in the small room. How can you feel what I'm thinking? Hiruzen asked, baffled that the boy was claiming to have the ability to read minds. Were his thoughts not safe now? Aphrodite smiled wildly, that would make for some kinky roleplay. She rested her flawless cheek on her manicured hand, he could be the villain that reads your mind, playing on your insecurities, while some girl, or guy, is the victim. Artemis, who had been busy glaring at Truth, couldn't help but deadpan at the air-headed goddess, are you serious right now? She shook her head in exasperation, you know what, don't answer the question. I already know the answer. When the Uzumaki laughed, the Lord Third felt like he was the child. I can't exactly hear your thoughts, Gigi, that's impossible. Naruto admitted. It's kind of hard to explain. The blonde trailed off, rubbing his chin with his right hand. It's like I'm connected to well, everything. That's the only way I can describe it. Apollo hummed to himself, interesting that sounds a bit like your explanation. Forming a pencil in his right hand, he made a note on the paper in his lap. Truth simply shrugged, sort of. Whereas he is connected to everything I, on the other hand, am everything. There's a basic difference, one that makes it impossible for him to even come close to my level of power. At his grandfather figure's confused expression, Naruto explained a little better. When people are upset, I can tell. Naruto elaborated. And not just tell, but tell why. He continued, trying his best to describe what he could do. And how long have you been able to do such a thing? And why did you say everything instead of just people? The Sarutobi asked, wanting more. For how long, it's been since I could remember, he said, still rubbing his chin. For why I said what I did, that's because it's not just with people. Animals and plants, really anything as long as it's living. I guess I could say I'm connected with life. Here, Sarutobi noticed Naruto's eyes widen. For those of you who are confused, he looked at Ares, a wicked smirk coming onto his face, it means that Naruto's soul has opened up to the greater monad. He's become part of a greater system, one that encompasses all things, not just living. He paused as he glanced to his hand, in a sense he's become a part of me. I am him and he is me. A golden glow surrounded his hand before dissipating into the tense air. Apollo hummed to himself, Pythagoras, he knew of you, isn't that right? I did, Truth nodded his head, his red eyes briefly turning black, before turning back to their crimson color, sorry meant to say, he did. While Apollo found that strange, he chose not to push the matter. What is it, Naruto-kun? His voice was riddled with fear. Naruto gave him a sheepish look. It's nothing, Gigi, I've just never thought about it that way is all. Maybe that's the best way to describe it. His closed hand met his open palm. Yeah, I'm connected with life. The Lord Third sighed. The boy was going to give him a heart attack. So how can you tell what others are feeling? I'm not really sure, Naruto admitted, but I can do it. He finished with a wide smile. Hestia released a soft laugh, the fact that he can smile, despite everything he has faced, is quite impressive. The Hokage nodded, trying to process what he was hearing. And the golden matter you used on the Kumonin. That was what Hiruzen wanted to know the most about. If he had to guess, that was an A rank technique. Most grown adults didn't have the ability to even use such high rank techniques, never mind create new ones. The last time an A rank technique was developed it made its creator a legend. The copy nin was a man known far and wide. Yet, here he was, only 6 and already so far ahead of all those before him. It was unnerving to think that such raw talent and power was in the hands of such a young child. It's not unnerving, it's fucking epic. Ares roared with excitement, his fist raised into the air. He bounced in his seat as a certain sword started acting up. Paris sighed, Ares, you're a bigger disappointment than Hephaestus. She took a sip of the wine in her hand as she ignored the hurt look from her warmongering son. Oh, that, Naruto's smile grew, if that was even possible. I made it up. Hiruzen couldn't help but smile at Naruto's enthusiasm. What exactly was it? He needed to be the Hokage right now, not the boy's surrogate grandfather. Naruto chuckled awkwardly. Don't really know that either. Sarutobi sighed. Did the boy know anything about his own abilities? The way he could use them said he did, but that, surprisingly, was not the truth. Can you tell me anything about it? Anything at all? He asked, wanting meeting. To know what the boy knew. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I can describe how I do it. When Hiruzen nodded the boy continued. There's this kind of feeling in the air, like a constant energy that's always around me. I don't know why others can't feel it and I can, but I do know that it's there. The way he describes it makes it sound a bit like the Force, Hermes noted, drawing surprised looks from his family, especially with how he describes it as an energy that's always around me. Ruth raised an eyebrow in surprise, well that's one way of describing it. He'd heard it described like that before, mostly from some fanatics called the Jedi. He can't mean natural energy. The Hokage thought to himself. There's no way someone could be born able to feel it, right? Apollo smiled, so they have a name for it. Interesting. He tapped his knee and thought as he watched the scene play out, and if I'm hearing correctly, which I am, people can learn to feel its presence. He glanced to Hermes with an idle smirk, there may just be hope for you, H. Hermes winked back at the sun god, it's me Apollo. There's always hope. When his Jiji didn't reply he continued. When I need it I can pull the energy into myself. When I do, a lot of stuff happens. He held up one finger. My body becomes tougher. 2 fingers, I get a whole lot stronger. Like yesterday, I lifted an entire tree out of the ground. 3 fingers, I get faster. I think I can outrun anyone in this whole village. Looks like we have a new contender for the title of Superboy. Hades smirked at the irked look on Zeus's face. He was going to enjoy this a lot. Sarutobi highly doubted that, there were a lot of fast ninja in Konoha, but he didn't voice his thoughts. 4 fingers. I can feel others more, and farther away, too. Hiruzen's eyebrows climbed up into his hairline. This kept sounding more and more like natural energy by the minute. 5 fingers. And I can control and shape the energy around me. That's the gold dust stuff you saw forming the arm. Zeus's jaw clenched to Narita Shonen of his sons could ever do what Naruto had just described, and that upset him. Now that did not sound like something any sage the Hokage ever heard of being able to do. Naruto-kun, I believe you were born with the amazing ability to use natural energy, something only a sage is capable of doing. Hiruzen informed with a smile on his face. There is only one other person in this world that can use the sage arts, and that's my pupil, Jiraiya. Naruto shot up out of his seat. You mean I can use the same power as one of your students? He half-asked half-yelled, excitement evident in his voice. A beautiful smile, Aphrodite commented as she watched the Apollo look-alike, if I didn't know any better, I would have thought he was a child of yours Apollo. The sun god smiled back at her, his golden hair brightening the room a bit, thanks. Hiruzen nodded. It would seem so. But whereas he had to be taught the sage arts, you were born able to use them. Another smile ghosted the elderly man's lips. It's truly remarkable. Naruto nodded, a 1000-watt smile plastered to his face. So what now, Jiji? He asked, eager to learn more. Hiruzen thought on it for a moment. What was he going to do with the boy? He definitely needed to contact Jiraiya and have him come home. He needed to know of this mind-blowing discovery. He also wanted to train the boy, he knew he would become someone more powerful than even his father. Having a hand in teaching such a person would be a gift in and of itself. Throwing him into the academy would be a shame. His talents would be wasted in that environment. What could he do? Ares was now jumping in his seat, make him join the Anbu. An idea began to form. With a snap of his fingers, a man dressed in black clothing, grey armor, and a white face mask, a member of the zoo, appeared from within the shadows. It wasn't a surprise to Naruto, having felt the man's presence the moment he arrived shortly after them. He knew the man as the lazy one, his favorite zoo member. The shock of gravity defying silver hair just confirmed this. Inu, do you think you have room in yourself for one more? It was worded as a question, but it wasn't intended as one. When the god of shinobi spoke, you listened, no matter what you were asked of. Discreetly of course, no one besides you will know his true identity and only your team will know that he's even in Anbu. He added, never taking his eyes off of the Uzumaki. He's got a great body, that's for certain, Aphrodite stated with a dreamy sigh. She looked to Artemis, what do you think Hardy? He your type? She glanced back to the pic, I mean he has your favorite color as hair. Artemis growled under her breath, first of all, don't call me that. Second I don't like men or women romantically. We don't even know what this Inu person looks like or how he acts. So? Aphrodite asked, honestly confused by Artemis' statements, I don't see how that should stop you. It doesn't stop me. Hera, who had been listening in, couldn't help but snort, why doesn't that surprise me? Naruto could feel the man's reluctance and was intrigued that it didn't come in his dislike of either his age nor his burden, but something else, something personal. Why did the lazy one care for him? After the split-second hesitation, the dog-styled masked nin saluted his Hokage, giving the aged warrior an affirmative, yes, sir, before turning his gaze to the blonde. It won't be easy Inu began in a hard and firm voice. He then gave off the feeling of warmth and protectiveness, Kohai. That's actually kind of sweet, Hermes smiled at the scene, before glancing to Apollo, why couldn't you be like that, bro? The sun god rolled his eyes, well, that might have to do with the fact that you stole from me. He shook his head, I mean those were some of my favorite cows ever. Hermes frowned, and I gave you my lyre in repentance. Naruto gave a warm smile and nodded as fast as he could. I'll do my best, Inu-senpai. And with that said, Naruto could already feel the great things he was going to do with Inu. It will be tough Naruto-kun, but I believe you can do it. I think you will be able to protect Konoha better than anyone else. The Hokage said warmly, his smile showing his pride for his successor's child. This was it. Welcome to the Anbu Black Ops. He would finally be able to do what he wanted the most. Protect Konoha. Nezumi Kohai. Wait. What? Then flashback. Brat, that's actually kind of funny. Cause he's so small, Hermes snickered to himself, his eyes glistening with a few tears. Apparently, Anbu operatives were given their codename by their captain and Inu just happened to be Nezumi's captain. Well, he was going to be Nezumi's captain once he received all of the required training. Couldn't have someone out in the field that didn't know what they were doing. When he asked why he was dubbed Nezumi, Kakashi replied with, because your tiny a tick mark appeared on the blonde's forehead, like a mouse he added, and was met with silence, small. Nezumi sighed. That was okay with Nezumi, he was only 3. He had time. Esja shook her head in sadness, only 3 and he's taken someone's life. She could feel the golden tears ready to flow from her eyes, but she refused to let them flow, it was only a story after all. All he had to do now was survive Inu's health school, whatever that meant. It shouldn't be too hard. He was happy, and nothing could change that. That's what he thinks, Ares cackled to himself, ignoring the strange looks he was given. Nezumi was miserable. If there was such a place as hell, Nezumi thought that it sounded like a nice place to vacation to. Hell school was painful and exhausting, physically, emotionally and spiritually. What the hell was wrong with his captain? Was he a sadist? That would actually explain a lot. Nezumi was currently sprawled out on his rock-hard bed, having moved into the Anbu headquarters the day after he talked to the Hokage and Inu-senpai about joining the zoo, which just happened to coincide with his 7th birthday. It was required of all agents to live within the Black Ops building. At first, Nezumi wasn't all that thrilled about the idea, but now, after 6 months of the place, he didn't even notice anymore. He chalked it up as just another thing he had to do for his village. Ares wiped the snot from his nose, I totally knew it. Nobody can ever be happy with Hell School. The day had been a particularly painful day. His ability to manipulate natural energy was incredibly advanced, and the only person that could help him further his prowess with that was still not available. The Toad Sage was the kind of person who was very hard to find if he didn't want to be found. Apparently, he didn't want to be found at the moment. Month 1 and 2. His training consisted of the usual required Anbu material, which included a whole lot of studying. Anbu had to have a certain level of knowledge in both foreign and domestic affairs. Nezumi found that he wasn't the biggest fan of books. But he did as he was told nonetheless, accomplishing everything Inu threw his way. The 2nd month he had been personally trained by the Hokage in the ways of running a village. There was a lot of politics and other boring stuff involved, but Nezumi soaked it all up. He planned on becoming the greatest Hokage the likes of which Konoha has never seen. He really wanted to feel free and awake again. The only way he could do that was if he was protecting his village, his people. Athena smiled, an admirable goal. Every young man and woman should try to be better than their predecessor. She glanced to the grinning Ares and scowled, though I don't think Ares really cares about that. Ares nodded, yeah. It's just boobies and blood for me. Month 3. Another huge section of his training consisted of learning other shinobi skills. Inu had told him that he needed to be more versatile. A one-trick pony, whatever the hell that meant, was something he didn't want to be. Inu, who was now more of his sensei than anything, first taught him how to climb trees. Without his hands. That was something he actually enjoyed doing. And it only took 10 minutes. Inu senpai, after a long and detailed lesson on chakra and chakra control, explained to him that it seemed that he had abnormally amazing chakra control. Such a level of precision was something apparently only Tsunade, who happened to be another Sannin he shared something with, could accomplish. Senju Tsunade was the medical nin, and he was up to par with her when it came to control. He put that in the back of his head for later. Versatility, versatility, versatility. After the tree walking exercise, Inu senpai taught him to do the same thing, but on water. That too was incredibly fun. It also only took 10 minutes. Deciding that he needed to throw more difficult things at the boy, he began teaching him the shunshin, body flicker, which took a little longer for the boy to learn. This time it took 15 minutes. Hermes pouted as he crossed his arms. It's like he's the very embodiment of the word hacks. He glanced to the wisdom goddess and Apollo. You certain you haven't had a child together? Athena blanched at the idea of having a child with Apollo of all people. No, Hermes. We haven't had sex. This was starting to intrigue Inu. The boy had said that he could understand everything so long as it was alive. That made Inu start to question. Were jutsu alive? Because if so, Nezumi was capable of understanding any and all techniques as long as they were performed within his sensory area. That was impossible though. The only technique he heard of that could understand jutsu like that was implanted in his left eye. The Sharingan. If it was true, just what were the boy's limits? Did he have any? From what I've seen, I don't think he has any physical limits. Hades noted, it's probably his mind that has them. He couldn't help but think about the alien superhero known as Superman. Superman had only one physical weakness, while his mind and heart were chained down by the emotional connections he had made. To destroy them would hurt him more than death. Hades glanced to his younger brother, Poseidon. That was something that all two men and boy had in common. Just like Percy, Poseidon whispered, his voice hoarse from despair. His emerald green eyes were red from crying. The thought began to make more and more sense. Nezumi was incredibly mature, far from anything a now 7-year-old should be. He was able to speak like an adult, see things from an adult's point of view, and understand the adult world. So, how did he do it? Inu had never been one to believe that age brought wisdom. He had known a lot of unwise elderly people. He personally thought that experience brought wisdom, which was not the same thing. You could live your entire life ignorant if you were sheltered or reclusive. Obviously though, a 7-year-old, no matter how hard their life may be, did not have the required experience to be so wise in the ways of the world. Something else allowed him to be so mature. That something had to be his empathy ability. If he could truly understand others, then he had to have started understanding their feelings. Learning about love, hate, jealousy, greed, lust, joy, sorrow and everything in between must have been the strangest thing for someone so young. That was the only explanation Inu could come up with on how a mere child could comprehend the emotions that he was able to feel. It was impossible, but that just made it even more special. The rest of the month he had used to come up with a name for the tangible natural energy he used. Month 4. Nezumi was then taught Shuriken Jutsu. That took up a lot of his time. It was hard for him to throw the kunai at first because his hands were so small. After Inu taught him a trick that he used to do when he was young, apparently he was a young prodigy as well, that involved his chakra he caught on fast enough. Month 5. The next thing Nezumi had to learn was stealth. He was a little nervous about it at first, but after a couple of weeks he got the hang of it. Then it was Kenjutsu training. After the first day Inu thought he had finally found something the kid wasn't good at. He realized how wrong he was a week later. The cut on his back still stung from that. Month 6. As of late, Nezumi learned a lot of ninjutsu, finding it to be his favorite. With his perfect chakra control, learning genjutsu was too easy, and his taijutsu was still developing. With the natural energy flowing in his body, he didn't even need to actually land his strikes on his target. Ninjutsu, however, interested Nezumi the most. With his sage dust techniques, which he now called the gold natural energy he could manipulate, he was already ahead of most jonin when it came to power. But he couldn't solely rely on it, one-trick pony and everything. To be honest, there's nothing really wrong with just sticking to one skill, Apollo admitted as he scratched the back of his head. He just needs to be aware of his limits. Athena shook her head in disagreement. And what happens when he meets someone who is immune to the sage dust techniques? Good point, but you're missing something important. Apollo retorted, the enemy may be immune, but the environment most certainly isn't. He smiled as understanding dawned on Athena's face. Athena tilted her head in respect, a fair point. So the Hokage and Inu began to teach him elemental ninjutsu. The blonde's affinities were wind and fire, which also was special. He didn't have a Kekkei Genkai bloodline limit, not really, so the fact that he already had two affinities that complemented each other, was amazing. That's why the Uzumaki was so exhausted at the moment. Inu Senpai knew a lot of ninjutsu, as did the Lord Third, and they was making sure to drill as many into Nezumi as possible. His body was sore and limp, and he loved every moment of it. It reminded him that he was gaining the strength to do what was needed to be done. Things were going to change when he got out of these walls. The Konoha's enemies would think twice before striking. Their people would know peace. Nezumi would be a hero. Even better, Nezumi would be a monster. The Oinsa smiled, a smirk playing on his lips as he sipped some of his wine, to quote Sue Grafton, "Beware the dark pool at the bottom of our hearts. In its icy black depths dwell strange and twisted creatures it is best not to disturb." Nice one, Truth complimented the wine god, but I can do better. Apollo was the first to clap, everyone else not too far behind, Catherine Envalente. Yup, Truth nodded with a pleased smile on his face, that poem truly describes how I feel about everyone. At the end of the day, everyone eats at the same table. It had been a whole year since he joined the zoo, and Nezumi had finally been cleared field ready. He was nearing 8 now, and he was a certified member of the Anbu. He was nervous now though. Today was the day he met the rest of Captain Inustum. He understood Inu's words when he said it would take the team a while to warm up to him. He was the youngest Anbu agent the elemental nations had ever seen. The others just needed to be positive that they could rely on him to watch their backs. They could. Inu had been extremely happy that he and the blonde were the same, patriots to the core, but still cared about the lives of their fellow citizen above all else. When Kakashi told him that those who abandoned the mission were considered trash, but those who abandoned their friends were worse than trash, Nezumi loved the saying so much that he asked if he could live by it as well. Kakashi, of course, said yes, he didn't even have to ask. "I like it," the smile on Hescha's face was breathtaking. "I'm glad to see that some people still have morals." The rate at which the blonde was able to learn and process, well, anything, was amazing. Inu didn't know of anything the boy couldn't do. He thought Nezumi was strong at first, but after Jiraiya had finally shown up Inu prayed he never defected. Having to fight that would be bad for anyone's health. They'd die, plain and simple. He wasn't invincible though, and Inu was happy that the blonde realized that. Anyone could fall when arrogant or outnumbered. "Chronos," Zeus whispered coughed into his fist. He smiled when he saw his beautiful wife scowl in agreement. Nezumi took a deep breath. "Here we go." He whispered, pushing through the double doors of Team Row's designated lounging area. He was immediately met with stares. There was a small boy in a standard Anbu uniform, and they didn't like where this was going. The Uzumaki agent took in his surroundings for a moment. The room was of medium size and Spartan. All there was were grey walls and 3 very large black couches. The couches were set up so that they were connected, and a long glass table was centered in the middle of them. "Ah, Nezumi Kohai, you made it," Inu called out over the palpable silence. "Come here, I'll introduce you to everyone." Nezumi gulped, but obeyed nonetheless. "Yes sir." When the blonde made it to his captain, Inu put a hand on his shoulder. "Everyone, I'd like you all to meet Nezumi. He's going to be assigned to Team Row for a while." No one said anything, but they didn't have to. Nezumi could feel what they thought of him. "Great, we're stuck with some brat. What is the Hokage thinking? Hey, isn't that no, it couldn't be." That last one almost made Nezumi flinch, but he stayed composed. "I hope we can work well together." The blonde bowed. Artemis tilted her head in thought, good on him. If she had been in his shoes and not a deity, she would have been shaking in fear. Those people, they were not ones to be trifled with. Even though it was just a story, she could tell that each and every one of them could stand with God. She could feel her blood boil with excitement. It actually irked her that her body was responding in an Aries-like manner. Inu cleared his throat. "Right, well, let's report to Hokage-sama. I think it's about time for the newbie to take on his first mission." Nezumi gulped. 2 months. It had been 2 months since he joined Team Row, and they still treated him like trash. He was officially the team censor and not a frontliner, which is what he wanted to be, and the missions they carried out had little use for his abilities. He did spot an enemy ambush 2 weeks ago, but apparently that wasn't something that warranted much respect. He had been training for so long and he still couldn't wake up. It was somewhat annoying. Nezumi was currently sprinting through the forests that occupied the border of Hai no Kuni and Tsuchi no Kuni with Tora and Usagi, 2 of the people who disliked him the most. Inu Taicho said that if he worked with them more that they would have to warm up to him sooner or later. Nezumi highly doubted that but followed orders all the same. The 3 of them were doing a simple border patrol, making sure everyone stayed in their own countries. Simple enough, right? Nothing was ever simple. Nezumi signaled to the 2, stopping their fast-paced travel. "What is it, kid?" Tora asked, annoyed that the blonde was holding them up. "2 people are headed right for us." He signed an Anbu code. "They aren't friendly either." He took another second to analyze the incoming shinobi, trying to understand what it was he was feeling. His eyes widened. "Shit," he whispered, causing his comrades to take defensive stances. What they heard in his voice made them wary. What was going on? They must have felt me as well, the blonde thought to himself. If Tora and Usagi die because of me. "Get out of here you two," Nezumi whispered. His tone was serious. The only female of the group, Usagi, spoke up. "Look kid, no matter how special you think you are, you can't just order your senpais around." She was giving off an annoyed emotion, Nezumi could tell. "You're still just a brat." "I wanna punch the bitch," Hermes glared at the female Anbu. "You don't just ignore the person who can tell you where the enemy is. That was how you lost good men and women." Athena groaned, "Well, I wouldn't use the same words, my brother is right." The blonde sighed. Were these people ever going to show him respect? So far Inu was the only person to welcome him into the fold. "Usagi-senpai, there are 2 Jinchuriki on their way from the direction of Tsuchi no Kuni," he informed them. "They have probably felt my Bijuu's presence and decided to investigate." He could feel their fear. "Don't worry. They're here for me, not you." He tried to calm them. "Go. If I don't return, then Konoha will know where they stand with Iwa." He felt their disbelieving minds. "You're going to sacrifice yourself for us?" Tora asked, astounded. It was no secret that both he and Usagi hated Nezumi, so why the hell was he doing this? Why? The two Anbu's hearts almost broke when he took his mask off and smiled at them, of all things. "Because we're comrades. You'd do the same for me if it was the other way around." Nezumi sometimes wished he couldn't feel people's hearts. "No, we wouldn't." Nezumi steeled himself, Anbu didn't cry. "Now go," he repeated, "this is my fight." And with that, he turned around and took off in the direction of the fast approaching Iwan Inn. It was a warm and sunny day, the complete opposite of what it should have been. He was sacrificing himself for people who didn't even see him as a person. He just couldn't bring himself to care though. This was it. Time to wake up. Estia wiped the tears from her eyes as she watched the young mortal steel himself. He was so much like Zeus, she shook her head. No. That was impossible. But was it? Was it possible? Was Naruto that world Zeus? Her heart started beating faster as she glanced at her younger brother. Truth smirked to himself, all the pieces were starting to coming together. It had taken hours to regroup with Inu Taicho and the rest of the squad, but when Usagi and Tora explained what had transpired earlier in their border patrol, they regretted it. "You're worse than trash now." Inu's cold voice hit Tora and Usagi like an enraged tsunade. "How could you just leave him to die like that?" The worst part about it was that he wasn't even yelling at them. He was speaking in a soft and very scary voice. But Usagi tried to defend herself but couldn't think of anything to say. Apollo rested his head in the palm of his hand. "I agree with Inu. They are worse than trash." He paused to look at Hades. "I think I've found you some new interns, Uncle H. Gee, thanks." Hades replied with a roll of his eyes. "Why does everyone assume I like people like that?" They had abandoned someone who truly cared for them. They knew of his abilities to feel almost what others thought. He must have known what their response was to his attempt to establish a bond. And despite knowing this, you still went and did it. Hermes clapped his hand sarcastically, his eyes like daggers. The two Anbu's hearts almost broke when he took his mask off and smiled at them of all things. "Because we're comrades, you'd do the same for me if it was the other way around." Nezumi sometimes wished he couldn't feel people's hearts. "No, we wouldn't." They didn't get the chance to speak again. Inu was gone, out to look for his wayward Kohai. Minutes after Usagi and Tora left. Nezumi, no, he was Naruto now. He was awake, was face to face with 2 S-class Jinchuriki. They had taken countless lives. Konoha included, and had years to tame the beasts within. Naruto was 8, and the only time he had interacted with his charge they didn't even speak. Unfortunately for them, that was enough. Flashback. When the old pervert finally made it to Konoha, Naruto was put to work right away, and not just in Senjutsu. Jiraiya-sensei had been adamant that Naruto try and establish a link between him and the Kyuubi. Naruto didn't mind so much as he just didn't know how. "Just relax," the Toad Sage told him, "calm yourself and visualize what you want." Naruto sighed. What exactly was it that he wanted? Jiraiya had said that he was Konoha's Jinchuriki, and even though he didn't like it personally, his fellow Sennin told him that he needed to learn how to harness the Bijuu's power. Of course Naruto wanted to protect Konoha, but he felt guilty just taking what was not his. Didn't he kill a Kumonin for that? So what did he want? Deciding to just wing it and come up with an answer later, Naruto dived into his own mind. It was a wet, dark, and broken place. So nothing unusual. A long corridor, what looked like an underground sewer of sorts, stretched out from both behind and in front of him. Water dripped from the ceiling, and the walls were cracked. Did he mention that he was knee-high in something he hoped was water, because he was? He chose to walk forward, might as well, and he began to regret his choice. It felt like hours had passed since he arrived and everything seemed to be the same, never-changing, dingy hallways. Dionysus frowned as he watched the scene. Well, that's not good at all. He smiled at the confused look on everyone's faces. That is his soulscape, a representation of both his mind and soul, and the fact that it is like that, well, it doesn't bode well for him or those that are close to him. Really? Aphrodite was the first to ask. I mean, it does look kind of bad, but I doubt it would be life-threatening. The god of madness shook his head in exasperation. Lady, that is his soul we're talking about. He should be dead for all intents and purposes. The fact he's still alive, I'm truly stumped as to how that is possible. It may have something to do with his power, but I can't be too certain. That's when he came upon the large room that doubled as a cell on the far side, a very, very large cell. The metal bars, adorning a large tag, the red seal, reached into the darkness that was above them, lost in the expanse that was his mind. For a long drawn-out moment, everything was still. He began to think nothing was beyond those figurative bars until a single red-slitted eye peered through the darkness, capturing the small boy in its gaze. Ah, the demon. Dionysus smiled. I was curious as to what kind of creature could be sealed into a child. He stroked his beard and thought as a small laugh escaped him, it certainly isn't lacking in the size department. Apollo snorted, that thing could give Kong a run for his money, the Peter Jackson version that is. Before, when Naruto tried to feel the mass in his gut, he only ever felt hatred or malice, and at times, loneliness. Now, standing so close to the famed monster, he seemed almost calm. Naruto smiled. Was his soothing natural energy relaxing the all-powerful Biju? He's still such a child, so much to learn about the divine and monstrous. Dionysus rolled his eyes at the inquisitive look Athena sent him. The demon is probably just curious as to what the ant is doing. It's like us gods, we barely care about the humans, unless it's to satisfy some sort of itch or desire. Zeus nodded, I agree with my son. We live a very long time, some might even say too long, compared to humans. We watch as they grow old, changing the world around them, for better and worse. What is one human compared to the rest of their species? He noticed the sad look on Herm's face. Pan knew this, Hermes. He was a good person, maybe even too good for this world, despite some of his other traits. Whatever the case may be, Naruto was certain that the Kyuubi could feel him as well, like he too had the ability to read emotions. Naruto never felt so close to another in all his life. They were the same, in more ways than one. They were both scorned by the world. They were both the definition of strong. They were both forced upon each other. They were both too different than what people were comfortable with. And by far the most important and startling similarity was that they were both monsters. Standing proud and tall, not against the misunderstood Biju, but beside him, was thrilling. There was no need for words. Everything was being said through their eyes. I'm sorry for what's happened to you. I know. I'm going to save you. I know. I'll need your help. The visage that was the Kyuubi morphed into the terrifyingly wicked grin that stalked the nightmares of so many. I know. Then flashback. Apollo blinked, a Kyuubi, interesting. I never thought I would see such a beast again. He couldn't help but blush as he remembered his lost love, Inari. He could still remember the way her golden furry ears felt whenever he would pet them. Naruto wasn't sure why Team Ro felt so awestruck when he returned to the village the next morning. He's in tattered and scorched rags, a sure sign of battle. Even Usagi and Tora felt like they were relieved and happy. His face mask is nowhere to be seen, and he's covered head to toe in soot. That was strange, but Naruto was never one to look a gift horse in the mouth. What happened to you out there? Still, he was disappointed in himself. One got away. Kakashi stored his observations away for after what was to come. Before he could think more on that line of thought, Tora and Usagi approached Naruto. He wasn't awake anymore, he was Nezumi now. The two approached Nezumi with a small bit of trepidation in their step. No, he didn't want them to fear him. That's when he realized it. We apologize for being worse than trash, Nezumi Kohai. They both shouted simultaneously, their heads lowered in a deep bow. They weren't afraid of him. They were upset with themselves for abandoning a teammate. They accepted him. Nezumi's heart jumped. Was it finally that time? Was he now noticed as important? If you have it in you to forgive us, we promise to treat you with the respect you deserve. Usagi begged. I would be proud to work alongside such an amazing comrade. Tora added. That was it, the word he was waiting, craving to hear. It was that time after all. He was finally a part of Konoha, small as it may be. He was being recognized as a comrade and not someone not even worth the oxygen he consumed. Zeus's hand started to twitch as lightning shot of them. I'm doing my best to contain my rage, but I want it noted that I really want to destroy that village. Maybe even grant a few people immortality, just so that I can torture them forever. Hades couldn't help but be surprised by Zeus. He was normally far more reserved than that. You okay there, brother? He hadn't seen him that angry in a long time. Poor Prometheus, he didn't deserve to have his liver eaten. Izumi chuckled. You guys look silly bowing your heads to an 8-year-old. Usagi and Tora raised their heads. Of course I'd like to work with you. Here he spread his arm out, motioning to the rest of the members, all of you, if that's okay. The smile on his soot-covered face was all the gathered members of Team Ro needed to break into cheers of approval. The kid was alright in their book. Naruto could feel it, all of the accepting hearts and minds of his team. It was almost too much to handle. Almost. Apollo used a napkin to dab at his eyes, the tears flowing freely. The feels, man. The feels are too much. He couldn't help but hug his twin sister as he cried into her shoulder, wetting her dress. I hate it when he does this, Artemis mumbled to herself as she pat her brother's back. She glanced at Truth and mouthed for him to hurry up. Izumi, you need to be debriefed. Inu Taicho spoke above the yelling. The Hokage needs to know what happened during the time you were MIA. The cheers died down, but the emotions still filled the air, and that was enough. Nodding to his captain, Izumi headed for the exit, intent on following the silver-haired man. Before he could make it out of the door though, Usagi called out his name, causing him to stop and turn to the woman. Yes, Usagi-senpai? He asked, a gentle smile stuck to his face. Damn, he really needed to work on his poker face. I forgot to say this before, but she paused, looking back at Tora who nodded at her. Thank you, and welcome to the Anbu. She crooked her mask to the side slightly so that only he could see what lay underneath dark onyx eyes that complemented her long dark hair, a small nose, luscious lips, and an altogether pretty face, and planted a small kiss on his cheek. The room lit up in Os, and Nizumi's face went a deep scarlet. He was also pretty sure he had an incredibly stupid grin plastered to his face too, but he didn't care. That was awesome. He did it. He was now officially a member of the zoo. Hermes couldn't help but chuckle, not even 10, and he's already getting kisses from the ladies. Heh, he might even be better than us. Having heard the happenings that his newest operative explained in great detail about the death match he had with two people he was unfortunately familiar with, had the Lord Third Hokage nervous. Seeing the subsequent head of Yoten no Rashi laid out on his desk, unsealed from the scroll, said operative put it in after he managed to defeat and kill the powerful man scared him further. What couldn't this boy accomplish? Aphrodite crinkled her nose in disgust. Ew. Who wants the head of a dead man? Seeing the lifeless eyes made her uncomfortable, besides Hades that is. Come on people. How many times do I have to say it? I don't like stuff like that. Hades felt like he was the butt of every joke. I'm a god of the underworld, not a god of gore or death. Gidgy about the Yonbi, the soot-covered blonde even looked nervous here. We need to talk. His eyes dragged over to where he could feel the ever-present Anbu watching their leader closely. In private, his voice was riddled with concern. Great, what now? And that's episode 2. Truth pressed a button on the remote in his hand, any thoughts? He glanced to the deities in the room, and Soul, sleeping, demigoddess. Seeing no one raise their hand, he shrugged his shoulders, fine by me. If anyone needs me, I'll be setting up the next episode. The Warzone is a place someone like me can thrive in. Opposing sides fight to the death to claim the victory. Everyone on the opposite side is fair game. All of them must die. Exactly, Ares nodded his head like a wise old sage man, a small stringy white beard forming on his chin. There can be no survivors in the game of war. His outfit changed to that of a Chinese ceremonial dress. His eyes became much smaller, similar to an Asian person. Monsters like me are the star players in the game that is war. It's a place we can feel alive, free, awake. Ares laughed loudly. Oh, if only my influence could reach to that world. The boy would be my son and heir, the new god of war. 'Twas a shame he couldn't, though he shot Truth a small look. Maybe it could, still, be possible. Zeus rubbed his chin and thought. He too was of a similar mind, though he personally thought that the boy would be much better than Ares. He would be taking a page out of Odin's book, but it would be worth it. I never thought I would have the privilege to not only witness one of these ridiculous bouts, but help bring about the fall of the very person who started one. I'm elated that I was wrong. Greetings war-torn Mizu no Kuni, a monster has arrived to set you free. A good start, Hades muttered, his dark eyes narrowed in thought. The boy, this monster, was a demon, something that he would not want to face on a bad day. The shores that made up the coast of Mizu no Kuni were heavy with fog. The sun was nowhere in sight and the air was thick with moisture. It felt like it could rain any minute now. The small fishing village the four-man cell arrived at was said to belong to the resistance. The war between them and the Lord Fourth Mizukage was heavily reliant on territorial dominance. Mizu no Kuni was made up of several islands, all centering the country's hidden village, Kurigakure no Sado, which was currently in the hands of the tyrant known as Yugura. The man was leading a crusade to purge the bloodline users from Mizu. It was said that he thought them to be too dangerous to let live, so decided to kill his own people out of fear. Hundreds of thousands had already been slaughtered and many more still lived in fear of his genocide. The other nations all decided to stay out of Mizu's business, letting them handle their own domestic affairs. Zeus closed his eyes in thought, so this man thinks himself a leader. His form was sparking with electricity, forcing his wife to leave his side, lest she be struck by his anger. He knew that it was hypocritical of him, after all, he had done the same thing before. The difference, though, was that he had exterminated the gold people in one fell swoop. He might have been paranoid, but he still had the heart to give them a merciful death. No good leader exterminates the people that make up his nation. His white hair was starting to turn black, akin to that of a dark stormy day, for only a fool inspires fear. Truth nodded his head in agreement, agreed. The mortal has planted the seed for his own demise. Now, time would do the rest of the work and help that seed to become a strong foundation for a rebellion. His attention went back to the little boat that moved through the waters, the fog hiding its approach. The bloody and crippling civil war finally reached the land of fire's citizens, in a way. A small scientific expedition into the waters that bordered Hai no Kuni and Mizu no Kuni turned into a massacre. The group of 6 civilian scientists, not a shinobi in sight, was captured by the Mizukage's forces and executed on the false charges of espionage. Konoha received their heads a week later, courtesy of the Mizukage himself. "He's fucked," Apollo stated, his truth domain making the fact known. He smiled sheepishly at his frowning aunt, sorry. But the fact remained, it would be a massacre when Naruto got his hands on the stupid man. Igura was a fool, because now Konoha had him in her sights. She cried for his blood, and his blood she shall be given. The Mizukage was playing a dangerous game by poking the sleeping dragon that was the god of Shinobi's wrath. That's why the Lord Third ordered a small contingent of Rohan to join the resistance and strike at Igura directly. Taking a deep breath of the cold, salt air-riddled afternoon air of the shoreline, Nezumi glanced at the captain of their newest assignment, Nico-senpai. The woman had long beautiful purple hair, and that was all that Nezumi knew about the cat mask operative. She was an Anbu through and through, she never took her mask off, at least since he joined the corps 2.5 years ago. Nezumi knew better though, she was a warm person and thought the same as he and Inu Taicho. The team was just as important as the mission. That made it easier for him to suddenly be under her command. "He's so cute." Aphrodite squealed loudly as she looked at the mask-wearing Naruto. She pulled a small camera out of her bosom, ignoring the stares from all the males, and took a picture of the scene. There was so much potential for that little boy. Artemis rolled her eyes at the air-headed goddess. Why couldn't she focus on the important matters? She, personally, liked the fact that Naruto, Nezumi and Inu all shared the same ideology. To his left was the official youngest Anbu agent in Konoha, Karasu. His best friend. The crow-masked operative joined the fold half a year after the little incident that caused Team Ro to finally accept him. It came to no surprise to Nezumi that Karasu entered the Black Ops, the things the blonde felt coming from the young Uchiha amazed even him. He was strong, obviously, but his mind and heart made Nezumi instantly want to befriend him the moment he walked into Rohan's changing room. Being the closest to him in age was a factor too. After a few missions together, the two became quick friends and were usually paired together. Team Ro had been a little more accepting when the 10-year-old joined. After working with an 8-year-old juggernaut made sure they'd never judge someone by their age again. Hera had to agree with the last sentence. She had learned that lesson after she had failed to kill baby Hercules. Bastard still held it over her head. Crouching next to Karasu was the newest member of Rohan, Seru. It was strange, first Karasu, and now Seru called him Nezumi-senpai. He was too embarrassed to refer to them as Kohai though, he was only 10 now. They were both at the very least 2 years older than him. Seru had shown a lot of respect to Nezumi right away, and that confused him greatly. The monkey-masked man had explained that he was somewhat of a celebrity among the younger operatives at HQ, even if it was just a rumor. A child with the strength of an entire army was what they described him as, and some even said that he was invincible. Nezumi was less than pleased about the rumors. His status as an operative was top secret. He was the Hokage's personal shadow, a silent defender. He didn't mind fame, but his Hokage had wanted him to be a whisper, not a poster boy for the village. They had Itachi for that. Poseidon chuckled, his laughter showing the strength that he was famed for, a secret weapon that's not a secret. That's bound to have some interesting consequences. Hermes nodded his head, he too understood the humor in that fact. Being a thief, he liked being a secret, a rumor to the wind. If he was known all around, he wouldn't be able to do half the things he did and still does. Of course, Seru was in his mid-20s, but that was apparently young enough to look up to the legend that was slowly coming forth. A small chuckle escaped the lips of everyone present. His thoughts were interrupted. Nezumi, find the resistance, we need to meet up with them and explain Hokage-sama's orders. Nico spoke, giving her first order as a captain. Nezumi nodded, already doing what he was told. The village was small and not a lot of people resided in it. That made it incredibly easy to lock onto the strong chakra signatures that he was sure belonged to the resistance. Done. They're not far from here, just northeast of this position, 10 minutes I'd say. Nezumi replied, waiting for the next orders to be given. Lead the way. She said, confident in his abilities. Having worked with the young blonde for the better part of 2 years made her a firm believer that he was in a league far out of her reach. She was just glad that he was letting her run the show, someone else that knew that they were the greater would have given her trouble during the entire assignment. Ah, she's a newbie. Ares chuckled into his mutton-like hand. He loved watching such people get their grunts killed. Although, in this case, he was wishing that his future heir was in charge. That's why she respected Nezumi, he was far from arrogant and loved to cooperate with his team, always listening to orders and offering help whenever it was needed. Hey. Ares jeered at the image of the purple-haired woman. Respect. Who the fuck wanted such a thing? That was totally a sissy thing. He ignored the various glares from his family. Hermes, ever the smooth-spoken, sighed into his hand, what a moron. He feared what would happen if Ares ever managed to take control of Olympus, it would probably be worse than even the Titans taking control. Yes, Captain. And with that, he took off in the direction of the higher-than-average chakra signatures, leading the cell for the short duration. He took in the sights of the village as he raced across it. There were a lot of shops, and the ground of the shopping district was made of cobblestone. Different. The people here looked so sad, and the young Anbu operative could feel their suffering. Good. Now he had more of a reason to fulfill his Hokage's orders. Yugura had to die. Like he said, it only took 10 minutes before they reached a seemingly random hut at the edge of a dock. Nezumi knew better, he could feel the shinobi below them. No one could escape his sensing capabilities. He was the greatest sensor in the village after all, able to feel the emotions and intentions of anyone in his range, which was incredibly large. Nodding to Nico, the mouse-masked boy fell back, allowing the woman to take the lead again. Stretching her arm out to rasp against a wooden door, she was cut off by a burly man with long black hair. State your business, Konohinin. I've done nothing wrong, and you have no jurisdiction in this part of the world. His voice was gruff, matching his appearance perfectly. The scar that ran across the bridge of his nose reminded Nezumi of a chunin he knew to work at the academy. He didn't know the man's name, but he knew that if he went to the academy, he would want that man to be his instructor. He had a good heart. Nico chose her words carefully. We've come on the behalf of the Lord Hokage. We have jurisdiction anywhere we so please. She gave the man a respectful nod of her head. Konoha wishes to help wash away the red from the waters. We're here to clean house. Talk about cocky, Apollo whistled, his eyes scanning the purple-haired woman's figure. If she were a man, I'd say she had some big ones. He didn't blame her, though. Seeing what kind of things Naruto could do, he could say that if he were a mortal, he'd be feeling quite safe. There it was. The code the resistance used to identify friendlies. That little piece of information was invaluable to them. Without it, the resistance wouldn't have let them anywhere near their plans. What they say about Jiraiya must be true. The man was a master spy. Wait here for a moment, was the man's reply, disappearing from the door to enter the small shack. 5 minutes later, the man returned and ushered them into the hut, which would have looked strange to onlookers. The hut looked like it could only fit 2 of them in at the same time. The hut itself was just a ploy, what lay underneath it was the true hideout. The underground tunnel was very large. An experienced Doton user must have had a hand in creating it. The tunnel stretched out for a small distance, which led out in an even larger room. There were people scurrying about like worker bees. Nezumi chuckled, it was like a hive. So that must mean the absolutely beautiful woman with long auburn hair sitting at the very large table in the center, giving him a predatory glare like he was her prey was the queen. Not gonna lie, she's not that pretty, Aphrodite admitted, although she has beautiful hair and a very nice figure her face isn't anything special. A part of her was kind of upset that her family thought that she was pretty because she wasn't. She speaks the truth of her opinion, Apollo affirmed her statement, although he disagreed with the said opinion. He personally thought that she was stunning, a very rare gem. Oh, woe to his cursed existence. Why did she have to live in that world? Truth rolled his eyes, both of them were being too childish. Their emotions were flowing of them in waves. This should be fun. He thought to himself before joining Nico and the rest of the team and making their way to the obvious leader. A smirk on her face kind of excited Nezumi. So, Konoha finally decides to send assistance and all we get are 3 Anbu. She shook her head in mock hurt. I'm disappointed. 4, Nico spoke, you've been given 4 Anbu to your cause. The kids Hermes realized, the woman's not counting the kids. Oh, this was going to be good. The moment she realized what Naruto could do, she'd be eating the dirt. Era grimaced she'd made the same mistake many times before. She rubbed her forehead in a soothing manner, attempting to stave off a headache that was forming. Ah, but you're wrong, sweetheart. She retorted. The children only count as half an Anbu. Her smile was still as sweet as it had first been. "So I've been given 3, such a shame too, I really could have used the help." Saru decided to speak on behalf of Karasu and Nezumi. "You're going to eat those words later on, beautiful." Nezumi sighed. Saru was always hitting on women. Even now, in a foreign country and in the presence of what the blonde could feel to be a powerful kunoichi. Artemis grimaced, "Men, what a shame." Here, she was thinking that he was a respectable man. Guess she was wrong. Although, to be fair, he didn't seem like a bad guy. She'd still reserve judgment, but her opinion of him had just dropped a little. The woman's predatory smirk intensified. "Yup, Nezumi definitely liked this one. Oh. Now I just can't wait to see what the youth of Konoha is capable of." She almost sounded genuine, but she couldn't escape Nezumi's abilities. No matter how good of a liar she was. "Our Hokage has given us orders to shadow the resistance and assist in any and every way possible. Our goal is to get Yagura alone with Nezumi here," she informed the woman, gesturing to the smallest member of the cell. A delicate eyebrow rose on the beautiful woman's face. "And why would your Hokage wish to have a child confront a cage-level Jinchuriki?" Nezumi was glad that he had his mask on, because if he didn't, everyone would have seen the absolutely terrifying smile on his face. "The Lord Hokage wishes to end the life of the Yonde Mizukage. The easiest way for that to happen is if we wake our sleeping comrade." The blonde really loved how his team understood him so. He would have started laughing if he hadn't trained so hard to be capable of keeping his emotions in check. The woman was now really confused. He guessed that she'd never met a monster before. "I doubt anyone has," Hades snorted at the thought of a mortal seeing a monster and living to see the next dawn. "Personally, I count him more as a demon. Monsters kill anyone that they can get their hands on. Doesn't matter if they are friend or foe." Athena tilted her head in thought. That was a very good point. She looked at her uncle in a new light. If anyone knew anything about monsters and would be willing to tell her, then it would be Hades. "Are you free this Saturday to talk?" she asked, already clearing a few days of her schedule. Hades nodded his head, "Of course." Black Harbor, Terumi Maid began, is a loyalist-controlled prison. It houses a good portion of our people. Here, an angry expression flashed across the woman's face. "The ones the bastard keeps alive." It had only been a few hours since the Team Rho contingent met with the resistance, and they were already being put to work. Karasu was indifferent. Saru was annoyed. Nico was ready to serve. And Nezumi was excited. If they could help win the war for the resistance, Kiri, with whoever became the Mizukage, Nezumi thought it would most likely be Mei, would be indebted to Konoha. He was going to have a hand in creating a peaceful alliance for his home and Kiri. He would save so many lives. And take so many more. It was a win-win situation. "Does anyone else find it strange," Apollo started, "that he wants to save lives and yet, at the same time, take them?" He scratched his head in thought, cause that was so confusing. He shot a questioning look at Truth. Truth shrugged his shoulders. "Don't look at me." He might know the answer, but he had no plans of revealing it. It was their job to find out more about him. "You want my team to, what, pull off a prison break?" Nico asked. She didn't see how this would help them any. "Yes, that is exactly what I want of you and your little team." Nezumi could feel that Nico didn't like Mei too much. "My top general went in to find information on the whereabouts of Yagura's top weapons manufacturing buildings." The green-eyed woman brushed a stray hair back into one of the 4 bangs that framed her face. "I was planning on sending 3 of my teams in, but if what you say about the 2 kitties is true, then I haven't the need to, now do I?" Izumi could understand why she wasn't Mei's biggest fan. She kind of came off as arrogant, but maybe that was just because she didn't know them all that well. Izumi wanted to chuckle again. He could play that game if that's what she wanted. "No." The smallest out of the Konoha, Anbu said, looking at Nico. "Let me go in alone, Captain." Ah, there it was. The emotion he was looking for from the auburn-haired woman. Incredulous. "This doesn't call for the 4 of us." He turned his masked face towards Mei. "I should be more than enough. Any more would be overkill." While Terumi was shocked into silence, Nico was mulling it over in her head. Nezumi usually never outright asked for a solo assignment, he was just given them because he was the only person strong enough to take them on. So why was he doing so now? That's when she realized what he was thinking. The resistance didn't trust them, and worse, they thought they were incapable. That little genius. He had worded it as a suggestion, giving her the authority to make the decision. He knew she was worried that he would try and take over, and to squash those thoughts, he showed she had seniority in front of the others. "It is smart," Athena admitted, ignoring the strange cough from Poseidon. "Naruto's not thinking like the kitty is, he's acting like a loyal, powerful soldier. One that values his home's safety above all else. For him, his pride is in his home." Yes, Poseidon hated to admit that Athena was right, but what he next said made it all worth it. "Shame you can't do the same." He knew that the smirk on his face infuriated the wisdom goddess. Zeus sighed, why couldn't the two avoid getting into an argument? He also knew that the only way for the resistance to realize just how valuable the team was, they needed to be shown that they were more than capable of fighting the good fight. If the youngest of the group could take down an entire prison filled with enemy combatants, not only would the cell be shown respect, but he'd be showing them Konoha's might. It did everything that both they and Konoha needed all in one go. It still astounded her how the boy was able to think and strategize to win the game with only one move. He truly was the monster he claimed to be. It just took her a while to fully understand what that meant. Permission granted. Nico nodded her head, both in confirmation and thanks. She was sure he could feel her gratitude. Do as you see fit to complete the mission. Izumi got the message. I agree and thank you. Yes, Captain. Ares resisted the urge to scowl, a slight grunt emerging from his mouth. He detested the fact that Naruto was taking orders from someone that was leagues weaker than him. He should have been taking what he wanted, destroying anything that stood in his path. I'll change that once I get my hands on him, Ares thought to himself, his eyes gaining a slight reddish glow. Wait a minute here. Mei finally spoke up. You're really going to just send the one kid? She couldn't believe the boy was as strong as they were implying him to be, she just couldn't. She knew that Konoha was the greatest of the five and that they produced child prodigies in bulk, but this was just ridiculous. What the hell did they feed their children in that village? Yes. Nezumi is very special and more than capable of accomplishing the required task. Nico replied. Don't be so quick to underestimate the ninja of our village. It's far mightier shinobi than you. Nezumi wished he could laugh, that was a good one. And it was the truth, which made it even better. Mei was silent for a moment, her narrowed eyes on the blonde boy. Then she relented. Fine, but if he gets my people killed it's on your heads. Izumi cocked his head to the right. His suspicions were correct. She was beautiful at every angle. Not really, Aphrodite's right eye was twitching with irritation. The only thing that helped was the fact that Naruto was young, having not yet grown into his own tastes. Sarutobi Hiruzen sat at his desk in his office, once again stuck doing paperwork. It really became overwhelming at times if he didn't take much needed breaks. Speaking of much needed breaks, Jiraiya-kun, it's good to see you again. He said to seemingly no one. That's when the aforementioned Sannin seemed to melt out of the wall, his camouflage technique deactivating. Damn, sensei, you're almost as good as the Gaki. Student spoke to teacher, his ever-present smug smirk on his face. I feel you, old man. Zeus nodded his head in sympathy, he too knew the horrors that paperwork brought with them. He ignored the strange looks from the rest of his family, they would never understand what he had to go through each and every day of his never-ending life. The only ones who could even comprehend of such a thing were his two brothers, both having their own domains and kingdoms to rule. You can't fool me yet, Jiraiya. I taught you everything you know after all. The Sandaime made a pouting face. Besides Senjutsu. The Sennin roared with laughter. That expression you made doesn't belong on the face of the Hokage, old man. Hiruzen mock glared at his pupil. Careful, Jiraiya-kun, you're getting pretty old yourself. The sage's laughter immediately stopped. Great, was he really a geezer now? Whatever. Jiraiya mumbled. Where's the Gaki? I've got some time before I need to head back out. The white-headed man leaned against the Hokage's desk. Thought I'd get a little training in with him before I leave. Hiruzen shook his head. Naruto-kun is out on a mission, he won't be back for some time. He informed his former student. Jiraiya sighed. Another one? He asked. Do you ever give the kid a break? It was true. Naruto was always out in the field, probably more so than he was in Konoha. His mission count was off the charts and he hadn't failed a single one yet. He'd been virtually everywhere the elemental nations had to offer, and that was a year ago. His success rate was 100%, something no other before him had accomplished. Jiraiya didn't know if he should be proud or nervous that Minato's son was already able to whip his ass in a spar. Neither, all the males in the room said, you should be embarrassed and ashamed. It didn't matter if Naruto was more powerful, Jiraiya had more skill thanks to his years of experience. Yet he still lost to a child. Apollo sighed, some master spy you are. He rubbed his hair in tiredness, can't even beat someone that's young enough to be your grandson. Everyone nodded their heads in agreement with the bright sun god. Naruto was a true prodigy, a genius among geniuses. He had surpassed many of the world's most powerful men and women by now, and he was only 10, nearing his 11th birthday. He shared the Sandaime's worries of what the young Uzumaki would become in the near future. Hopefully he would stay the same. A loyal Konoha patriot. He enjoys what he does, Jiraiya. The Sandaime said, rubbing his temples with his thumbs. He gets restless if he doesn't serve. He finished. I guess the Toad Sage mumbled. So, what are you having him do this time? He asked, curious of what the blonde was up to. The tales that he would hear from the Jinchuriki were the stuff you tell your children at night. Knights saving princesses, heroes slaying terrible beasts, and, his personal favorite, when the boy got the girl. That was a toned-down version of course. You couldn't tell your child someone their age was killing and slaughtering his enemies en masse, or how that same child was performing things that could make even grown men sick. And he never really got the girl. He'd just sometimes receive a thankful peck on the cheek or forehead. But Jiraiya digressed. I sent him to Mizu no Kuni. Hiruzen replied. I'm having him deal with a little problem over there. And by little problem you mean the civil war, don't you? Jiraiya asked. So nothing too different then. Save a country and kill off a repressive tyrant that's gone mad with power. His deadpan was barely concealed. That sounds just peachy. Hiruzen nodded. Indeed. I'm glad you understand. Jiraiya sighed. He really missed his godson. I think we can all agree that it's strange that they are comfortable with sending a grown child to do an adult's job, Hestia stated with a frown on her face, her honey brown eyes narrowed in sadness. She ignored her warlike nephew, she had no patience for such a person. I agree, but he is the most effective person for the dirty jobs, Hera admitted. She didn't like the fact either, but she could understand where the Hokage was coming from. Izumi now understood why the prison was called Black Harbor. The walls that encased the prison were made of some sort of black material that could withstand several high-ranking ninjutsu, or so May would have him believe. Yugura made sure that his prisoners of war had no hope of escape. Take away a person's hope and they might as well be dead. Walking husks of the people they used to be was not a life worth living. The black material was the reason why the prison was so hard to break into. And this so-called impossible feat was what Nezumi was tasked with completing. He first needed to break down the almost unbreakable walls, storm the prison, free the prisoners, and then find and escort the Sao-san back to the base. It was either that or sneak in and do everything covertly, but Nezumi decided to send a message to the Mizukage. We're coming for you. Signed, your friendly Konoha 10-year-old. I actually like it, Hades admitted, his right hand stroking his beard. Sure, it's a bit bleak, even for me, but add some sunshine, and I think you have the potential for a fearsome sight. He looked to Hephaestus. Do you think you can make something like that for me? Maybe, the master smith mulled over the details in his head. It would take a bit of time to find the materials necessary, but I think it could be done. Taking a moment to pull in the natural energy around him, the change of his eyes from blue to gold marked his entering sage mode. At first, Hiro Sennin was astounded that he could enter the enhanced state so quickly. It only took him 10 seconds now. Jiraiya had explained what it was like for him to draw on the world's power. For him, it was like he had to open a door and then actively pull the chakra in. Nezumi then explained that it felt somewhat similar for him. It was like he had to open the door, but instead of having to consciously pull the energy in, it would instead feel like the natural energy rushed through the door, excited to be reunited with him again. He inspected the structure for a moment and then decided to just hit it with one of his more powerful techniques and hope for the best. He was almost positive the walls would fall. Nothing should be able to withstand his sage dust techniques. Raising both of his hands into the air, he began to shape natural energy into a tangible form. He was sure that the prison guards knew he was there now if the high-pitched alarms that started going off were anything to go by. It mattered not. He was going to complete his mission. The energy took the shape of a giant golden-shaped warrior that formed around the blonde. He didn't know it at the time, but he was in a way recreating a very rare and powerful Uchiha technique. However, instead of invoking the fabled Susanoo, he called forth something much more befitting a person of his minced. That's anyone. Hermes raised a wad of cash into the air. Unlike mortal money, theirs was a pure gold. Who do you think he's going to summon? He also had a sheet of scratch paper beside him, taking notes of the various votes. Myself, Ares grinned as he handed over a few $100. He was totally going to win the bet. Everyone else rolled their eyes as Ares, he was such an arrogant fool, as they gave their own votes. Bishaman. Nezumi whispered, his voice only heard by the wind. Come forth so that I may bring about justice to those who would deny the laws of our freedom. With those words said, the spectral, molten gold warrior fully materialized, his full body armor and famed spear present, depicting a much more savage and terrifying visage of the god of war and justice. Ares's face fell into a scowl as he stared at the Japanese god that was a few $100 gone. Sure, he could easily make more, but the thought still stood. What a hunk, both Aphrodite and Apollo Wolf whistled at the massive titan of a god. They would have killed to spend a night with that god. The maiden huntress rolled her eyes. Knock it off, you two. She was getting tired of their antics every time they saw someone hot or pretty. It was like she was the only sensible one in the room. She paused as she felt something pat her head. She looked up at Truth, her eyes burning with rage. Remove your hand this instant or lose it. Truth merely rubbed her head in a fond manner, not afraid of her threat. Though, seeing the glare, he decided to not test the vixen. The spear was held in its left hand. Nezumi needed his right for what he was about to do. Bishaman was topped off with a fiery gold halo, which oddly enough only appeared every other time he summoned the Guardian. It briefly passed through his head that he was waking up now. Naruto was who he was at this moment, so he took his mask off, even though both Inu Taicho and Hokage kept telling him to stop that bad habit, and gave the world a smile in greeting. Uzumaki Naruto, the monster, was awake. He let his arms fall to his sides, he didn't need them anymore. Bishaman did what his mind commanded. He took another second to take in a deep breath, basking in the salt-smelling air. Then, he released his might upon Black Harbor. Senpo. Kami no Migiti, Sage Art. The right hand of God. He shouted, and within the span of 5 seconds, he rushed the prison walls, let loose the devastating technique, and the black barrier came crumbling down like it was a house of cards. The image of Bishaman smashing his right fist into anything brought a happy smile to Naruto's face, which in this case didn't matter, because he was already smiling at the world. He could hear the terrifying screams of disbelief within his target, and they only excited him more. The shock was evident throughout the room as they watched the artificial god destroy the prison. Its anger was evident, though, that was probably due to the fact that Bishaman was a manifestation of Naruto's power. He is powerful, Zeus finally commented, his mind running through various plans should he ever meet Naruto. He would hate to strike down a mortal child, but he wasn't against doing it either. His siblings rolled their eyes, knowing what was going through their king's head. Dropping the golden warrior, Naruto became incredibly faster, nothing but a yellow and gray blur to the men and women that made up the prison detail. His kunai met many throats in one go, and he was happy that there was so much more left. He unsheathed his tanto, intent on cutting down the 3 men who were preparing a suit and technique. Before they could reach the last hand seal, he was at their backs, the thin blade piercing flesh. With a single slash, all 3 men fell, gone from this world. While in sage mode, his awareness was heightened to such a degree, he practically had eyes in the back of his head. This awareness was to thank when he dove to his right, an absolutely enormous fireball smashing down on his previous location soon after. He took a look at the woman who had tried to turn him into ash and smiled. So she wanted to play with fire, did she? He sheathed the tanto he wore on his back and held his hands in the tiger sign. He was going to fight fire with fire then. Kaiten. Goryuka no Jutsu, fire release. Great dragon fire technique. He bellowed and brought forth a giant dragon-headed fireball that raced at the woman with intent to kill. Her screams were all the confirmation he needed. He repeated the fury with his kunai, ending the lives of 10 more guards, their crimson blood staining his bare face with its warm feeling. He didn't quite like the feeling so much as it was just a reminder that he was doing what he was born to do. He stopped, already done with the set of seals required for the technique he had in mind, for the 7 shinobi blocking his path into the prison itself. Fuden. Tatapa, wind release. Great breakthrough. This particular jutsu was only a C rank, but with the amount of chakra that Naruto pumped through it, it could easily be an A rank. As proven when the 7 shinobi stupid enough to block his entrance were cut down with the hurricane force winds that were forced upon them. He was now inside the bleak prison, time to find the control room. 4 minutes and several well-timed Rasengan later, he really needed to thank Jiraiya-sensei for teaching him the Lord Force's personal jutsu again. It was one of his favorites now, and he made it to the room he could free the prisoners from. He was disappointed. The enemy was far from satisfying. I'm in agreement with Mini-Me, Ares crossed his arms in dissatisfaction. That was nowhere near exciting. It had happened too quickly. Naruto, in Ares' mind, should have taken his time. There was nothing better than slowly killing your opponents. He would have to re-educate the boy when he finally met him. Ao was spending his time like all the other prisoners at Black Harbor did. Miserably. The staff didn't allow them any pleasantries. They had to sit in their cells and rot. The ex-hunter nin was surprised that they remembered to feed them. That in and of itself was a small miracle with the amount of attention they paid them. He had been stuck in this hellhole called a prison for far too long. He hated himself now for volunteering for this stupid mission. He was just terrified when Mei-sama would mishear him and threaten to take his life. That had been why he volunteered. He had commented on how young the shinobi of Kiri were looking nowadays and how he remembered back in his day, when he was young and not so old looking, that you'd rarely see someone so young make it into the ranks of the village. That, somehow, translated into him calling the powerful Kunoichi old and therefore unable to make a man fall in love with her age-riddled body. Ao had no idea where she got that from his little side remark, but the woman had promptly threatened to kill him, and that's how he ended up stuck in here, on his own accord no less. The things he did for his country. Hermes laughed, more like the things you do to avoid getting killed by a woman you work under. He wiped a tear from his eye, his divine heart still beating faster than normal. You're one to talk, Hera said. Her dull eyes were like glaciers as she stared at the silver-tongued god. I distinctly remember you doing something similar. Seeing the thief to burn red with embarrassment, she turned her attention back to the TV. That's why, when he heard the alarm bells going off, he had shouted for joy, which was not befitting of a strong man at all. He was just so tired of the nothingness that made up his days for the last 2 months. At least he got the information he came in here for, so that made it, at the very least, worth it. That thrice-damned Yagura was an evil genius. He had constructed a weapons factory underneath the village of Shio, which resided on the farthest of the southern islands. It was going to be a pain in the backside for the resistance to get to, it being so deep in Yagura's territory and all. They'd need the backing of several powerful shinobi, which they possessed, but the casualties would almost make it not worth the trouble. Unless they somehow convinced another village to assist them, Al was thinking that the weapons factory would remain untouched for a good while now. Not long after the alarm was raised did his cell door open, the resistance did an excellent job with this one. He thought Mei-sama would send 3, maybe 4, teams to extract him, but the speed at which he was released from his cell would make him believe she'd sent 6 or 7. Did he really mean that much to her? His delusions were severed when he heard the young male voice call his name. Ao-san. The blue, moosed-up-haired man turned to where he could hear the voice. I'm looking for an Ao-san. Does anyone know where Ao of the resistance is? Why was there a child calling his name? You there, boy? Ao called out, wanting to know what was going on. Where were the teams that broke him out? I am Ao of the resistance, what is it that you need? He emitted an annoyed feeling, why was there a boy looking for him? Ah, so you're Ao-san. Good. Mei-san has sent me here to retrieve you. He sighed. But I guess we don't have very far to go though. Ao raised an eyebrow. Why would Mei-sama, he put extra emphasis on the proper way to address the powerful woman, send a child to Black Harbor of all places with the retrieval team? He asked, confusion lacing his words. The boy scratched the back of his head. I am the retrieval team. He laughed somewhat sheepishly. It's just me. Prepare shock in 3, 2, 1. Apollo and Hermes counted down, excitement evident on their faces. They had shades on their faces as explosions went off behind them. It lit up the theater in a brilliant explosion of light and pure wind. The sudden wind caused the nearby deities to cover their faces lest they get some of the sparks in their eyes. Once it had died down, they shot the 2 immature gods strong glares. The strongest was from Artemis, whose long black hair was a mess of what it used to be. Her silver eyes were set into a burning glare as one arm covered her modesty and the other covered her breasts. The winds had been so strong that it had shredded her dress in all the places she wished it had. She marched out of the room with a burning anger. She would have her vengeance. Seeing her leave, Truth stated what was on everyone's mind, you're fucked. He didn't need to look at the 2 gods to know that they were sweating like crazy. That didn't stop him, though. He looked good and hard, ingraining the memory into his very being. He would be holding this over their head for ages to come, assuming they passed his test and didn't get destroyed. Although, almost everyone had to agree the silver panties were hot. Ao was silent for a long moment, an owlish look on his face. Did he just hear that correctly? Did this young blonde boy just claim to do what he thought 7 teams had done? Was he claiming to have broken into Black Harbor, taken out all of the guards, and then set him, along with everyone else being held captive, free by his lonesome? He was so shocked that he missed the boy slightly chuckle. He didn't know it yet, but Naruto could feel how astonished and disbelieving the Kirinin was. Your commander is closer than she should be, it was Naruto's time to be annoyed. Did the woman truly underestimate Konoha? They were the strongest military force in the elemental nations for a reason. Zeus tried to contain the humor he found in Naruto's thoughts, but assuming by the glare on Hera's face, he hadn't done a very good job of it. It wasn't his fault that he understood where Naruto was coming from. Hera merely huffed, not wanting to get into an argument with her idiotic husband. Ao nodded dumbly and followed the boy he just realized was a Konoha Anbu of all things. Was the leaf really so far ahead of Kiri that their children outstripped experienced Jonin? Both Apollo, Ares, and Hermes shared a look, an idea forming in their heads. Apollo leaned to his half-brother, you thinking what I'm thinking? His voice was as quiet as a mouth, but for gods, that was still loud enough. Hermes nodded back, a serious look on his face, of course. He pulled a pen and pad out, speak and I shall write it down on paper. We build a school for assassins, it was Ares that now spoke, his eyes gleaming with barely concealed interest, then we offer their services to the highest bidder. The quick jotting down of the notes had Hermes done in no time, though there was one final pressing matter to discuss, mortals, or demigods. That would decide how powerful they wanted their new business to be. I think you should be careful as to how careless you speak, Zeus broke into the conversation, his master bolt now in his hands, and pointed directly at the trio, after all, I'd hate to lose control of this thing and accidentally fry you. Truth had to contain the smirk on his face, thankfully he was able to do a much better job of that than the king of Olympus. Zeus sure was able to make a good threat and going by the ashen faces of the trio, they thought the same. When the boy identified as Nezumi left with the guide who was to escort him to Black Harbor, May had followed shortly after. She had taken a small team with her too, so when the boy realized that he wasn't as strong as he thought he was, she could step in and do what needed to be done. What she had witnessed truly opened her eyes to how outclassed they were compared to Konoha. The blonde had first whispered something that no one present could hear, and that's when that thing showed up. She wasn't a very religious person, but even she knew of the god of war and justice, and when she saw the child, if he could still even be called one, not only summon him, but command him, she had been terrified. One strike from the golden god collapsed the unbreakable walls, and that's when the boy began his massacre. The first batch of shinobi that he encountered was run through like butter with a simple kunai. He had no trouble at all, it seemed, with nothing more than that. Then he had used a tanto strapped to his back to cut down 3 guards so quickly even she couldn't make it out. When she saw the giant fireball crashing down on him from his blind spot, she had thought it was over. That's when the boy dove out of the way. Apparently, he didn't have such a thing as a blind spot. The dragon-like head he spit at the woman responsible for the flames that almost toasted him was all it took to end her life. May couldn't believe that a child was so good at killing. And the smile on his face while he did these things unnerved her. He then went back to a simple kunai to the throat method, taking out at least 10 more enemies. After he was blocked by what looked like to be 7 shinobi, he unleashed an absolutely ridiculous amount of force in the form of a futon jutsu. Zeus's eyes were narrowed in thought as he watched a small hurricane rip the enemy shinobi to pieces. He watched as the blood stained the ground red, the same thing happening to the boy's hands. That wind that he had summoned, good God. It had the force of a category 1 hurricane, a fact that was not to be taken lightly. He glanced at Ares. He really hoped that he didn't manage to sink his claws into the mortal god. When he had entered the prison, all she could hear were the screams of the men and women that made up the prison guard and small explosions. She saw all of the prisoners, some she recognized, some she did not, fleeing the carcass-covered grounds of the confines. Shortly after, the blonde, alongside Ao, made their way right for her. She wasn't surprised, he knew. She wouldn't doubt the boy ever again. Team Ro had earned her absolute respect. Before the two could make it to her and the few shinobi she took with her, the boy stopped and turned, telling Ao something she couldn't hear. When her general nodded a bit confusedly, she didn't know what to expect next. Ao made it to her and saw her confused expression. He said he didn't like the prison. Ao whispered. So he's going to raze it to the ground, he finished, somewhat hesitant of his own words. At that moment, the whisker-faced boy, which she now found to be both adorable and frightening at the same time, brought his arms into the air once again. The gold substance that his last attack was made of formed again, and with a shout of Tenmei, heaven's decree. Black Harbor was flattened out of existence by a huge beam of golden light from the sky. Harumi May had just witnessed the most terrifying thing in her still young life. She had seen a child of Konoha, no older than 10 she guessed, completely decimate an enemy stronghold by himself. She'd remember that day for the rest of her life. That day, she had witnessed it. The might of Konoha. Ruth smiled as the screen died down, a small orb of energy shooting back into him from the screen. It had been a good chapter, and he knew that the others agreed with him. Before he could say anything, a door slammed open, a small gust of wind, indicating the arrival of both Apollo and Hermes' doom. For there, standing in all her glory, was the huntress goddess Artemis. Her eyes burned with righteous indignation as she stormed up to the two and grabbed them by their collars. Her face was so close to theirs that they could smell her breath. It reminded them of a fresh dawn and how the dew would collect on the leaves of a plant or tree. Ruth smiled softly as his mind was taken back to memories long gone, to when the world was just new. He shook his head, now wasn't the time for such things. Although, he did have to admit, Artemis was rocking that new look. Gone was the ruined dress, now replaced with a white shirt that hugged her stomach, revealing just how toned it was. It had a slightly plunging neckline, not so much, though, that it wouldn't be considered modest. Just below that, she wore a short tight skirt that hugged her legs. It wasn't like the short skirts that Aphrodite had introduced to the entirety of America. No, the one that Artemis wore reached to her knees. It briefly crossed Ruth's mind that, for a virgin goddess, she dressed kind of provocatively. Maybe she had a reason for that, but he didn't really care. She topped it all off with some heels, raising her height slightly. It was enough, though, to look down on the cowering imbeciles in front of her. This was going to be a good show, watching Artemis beat up both Apollo and Hermes. That sounds so boring, Ares stated blandly. He personally wanted more fights to the death. One couldn't really even blame him for that, it was just in his nature to want violence. He literally lived on war and death. This was going to be a crappy chapter, he could already tell. If this chapter was about women, like he assumed it to be, he'd shoot himself. I sometimes wonder if my talents are nothing more than a curse. Why was I, someone so young, given the ability to understand things with such clarity? That was a very good question, one that everyone wanted the answer to. Why was Naruto given his powers? Was there a divine reason, or was it all by chance that he was given the power of a god? Time and time again, I find myself regretting the power I was given. Why me? The need to be a monster grows more and more with each passing day. The more I try, the more I find ways that I am what I claim to be. Be it mentally, physically, or spiritually. So why is it that I usually end up a hero? I still like him, Dionysus stated as he looked up from his magazine. The best heroes are those who don't want to be one. He ignored the thoughtful look on Apollo's face. He doesn't hide what he is, he doesn't even try and contain the urges that make him the monster that he is. I almost forgot that you could be philosophical, Athena joked, her lips quirked up just slightly. It was such a horrid sight, no one even knew that her lips could make sure motions. No, not philosophical, Dionysus shot back, his eyes gleaming with latent power, just raving mad. For those dumb enough not to understand, it means that I see things differently than you lot. At the end of the day, I ask myself these very questions and reply with the very same answer. Who cares? Exactly, Dionysus nodded his head, his eyes never leaving the magazine. You need not answer to anyone else. Just yourself and only yourself. He didn't know how many times he had burned mortals to a crisp for questioning his actions. Actually, not that he thought about it wasn't his rampage across Asia caused by someone questioning him. He shrugged his shoulders, it was a long time ago, didn't really matter anymore. That was the curse of immortality, time goes by so fast, leaving very little to treasure. It also meant that life wasn't sacred to him or the others, well, unless their domain had something to do with the aspect. I am a monster, be it Nezumi or Naruto. And every day, I become more and more okay with it. Ares grinned, his teeth glinting in the golden light. Good. He personally agreed with his drunkard of a brother, the more Naruto gave into his desires to be a monster, the easier it would be to convert him into a worthy heir. He ignored the looks of his family, their opinion of him meant absolutely nothing. If he had his way, he would kill them and harvest their very souls. He would bring man's true nature to light. He would watch as humans fought amongst themselves, killing and betraying everyone. He would watch as the entire world burned to cinders. The only problem was that Zeus had put a limit on his powers, preventing him from ever achieving his true status as the god of war. His grin grew wider, with Naruto's help he would exact his revenge and show the world, show them all that he was not someone to be trifled with. He would show them all, he just had to get his hands on Naruto first. When Mei returned to where Nico and her team were on standby, the young blonde that accompanied her was now Nezumi. He'd had his fun. It was time to put the mask back on and act like he wasn't a monster. Nico smirked under her porcelain mask, the way the leader of the resistance kept glancing at her Kohai told her all she needed to know. The woman had witnessed, with her own two eyes, the power Konoha had at its beck and call. Good. Now they'd pay attention to what her and her team said. Ah, the benefits of knowing a monster. I take it Nezumi was more than efficient in proving that you have been given 4 operatives who are more than capable of fighting the Mizukage's forces. Nico said somewhat smugly. Having Mei actually say that her Kohais were only worth half an agent really bothered her, and to see how the woman reacted to Nezumi's actions made her feel more than a little smug. Nezumi knew as much, even without his abilities to feel others. Her tone said it all. Ah, the benefits of being a monster. Indeed, Dionysus stated with a drawl as he threw the magazine that he was reading away, many benefits, maybe too much for a mere mortal. He sighed dramatically, do you think Nico will scream when Naruto turns on her? Will she cry for mercy when Naruto rips her apart piece by piece? I'd hope so, Apollo stated, his eyes narrowed in thought, cause if she didn't, then it would mean that there was something wrong with her. Indeed. Mei finally said reluctantly. I'll make sure not to underestimate you or your team again. She bit out. You have my word. The woman actually looked to be in pain, sorry. There. She said it, now it was time to move on and forget it. She would be hard pressed to admit that she was wrong and apologize to a Konohinin again. She loathed having to do it a first time. Poseidon chuckled lowly, immortal Athena everyone. He loved getting in shots like this, call it retribution for all the other times that she'd done it to him, stupid bitch. Athena rolled her grey eyes, that was just like her uncle. Apology accepted, Mei-san. Karasu replied with a respectable nod of his head. You didn't know if you could put your faith in us. Wow, this was the most the auburn-haired woman had heard the black-haired boy speak the whole time he'd been with the resistance. Now you know you can. Mei nodded slowly. Having children talking to you like they were adults would take some getting used to, if she could ever get used to it. Really, what was that village feeding its youth? Steroids, Hermes answered, his silver tongue making itself known, and lots of it from what I can tell. He shared a smirk with Apollo, the both of them holding an ice pack to their bruised eyes. The both of them paused in fear as they saw the ever-scary sister of Apollo, her eyes set into a warning glare. They could feel their immortal lives fleeing as she drew her thumb across her throat. Odds wasn't she just adorable? Did your general get the information he was tasked with recovering? Nico asked, wanting to know if Nezumi had been used for nothing or not. For the purple-haired woman, breaking people out who were already defeated and imprisoned wasn't the best way to spend their time. She hadn't planned to spend too horribly long in this war-torn country. She had a special someone waiting for her at home after all. Oh, Aphrodite cooed as she stared at the purple-haired masked woman, that's so cute. She just wanted to grab the woman and cuddle her and maybe get some one-on-one with her. Eris sighed in misery. She hated Aphrodite with all her heart. On one hand, their domains complemented each other so well, and on the other hand, Aphrodite was a grabby whore who could not, and would not, settle just for one man. She was a terrible person, destroying everything that Hera had ever done just to satisfy her own desires. If she had her way, she would strip the goddess of her domains and throw her into Tartarus to suffer for the rest of eternity. It would only be fair for all the pain that she had caused her family. Yes. A blue-haired man finally spoke up. The factory is underneath Shio. Ao revealed. That bastard stuck it somewhere impossible for us to get to without losing too many of our own. May's fist hit the earth-made wall. Damn it. She all but snarled. He really doesn't want to lose that damn place. She ran a hand through her long hair and sighed. We really needed to hit that base. It's our greatest way to cripple his armies. Nico thought it was a smart idea. Taking out the man's weapons factory would slowly make his men's supply dwindle down, causing more of them to lose battles with the resistance, not having the equipment to properly fight back. More deaths would lessen morale, which would then cause even more deaths. It was slow and subtle, but it was a smart move. The smallest of bug bites could fall a giant, and Team Ro knew it. Nezumi was practically the epitome of that very saying. Very small. And very deadly. Very. Sarah looked at Nico, a silent request to speak. He was given it in the form of a nod. May-san, if I may, I have a proposal you should consider. Nezumi smirked. Sarah might not be very lazy or constantly spam the word troublesome like the rest of his clan, but the pineapple-shaped hair was a dead giveaway. The man was a Nara through and through. And no other clan in the world could claim to be more tactically and strategically proficient than the deer-herding clan of Konoha. Deer? Artemis asked for clarification as she hadn't expected her sacred animal to be mentioned this story. It made her wonder if there was anything different between their animals and the ones that she hunted. Humans had obviously evolved differently in that dimension, so what was to say that the same wasn't true for animals? Different dimension meant different rules for how nature worked. For all she knew, a single deer could have 6 legs, 4 eyes and shoot fire out of its mouth. Correct, truth confirmed, the Nara clan is famous for 3 things. He raised 3 fingers, the first one is their ability to control shadows. If you were to face one in battle, try and do it where there are little to no shadows. He lowered one of the fingers, trust me. You do not want to be touched by their shadows. He grinned at Artemis, the second one is this. They share a special bond with the deer that live in the forest behind them. They are the only ones that can enter the forest without being attacked. The last poor soul to go in there, that wasn't an Nara poor guy. He shook his head in sadness. Another thing to note is that they use the antlers of the deer to make natural remedies. And the final one? Athena asked. Truth rubbed the back of his head, they are extremely intelligent. Hell, one Nara by the name of Shikamaru had an IQ well over 200. His face turned serious, they are a clan to be feared. They are smart, powerful and capable of making plans on the fly. Basically any mortal that gets on their bad side is fucked. Izumi turned his gaze to May and smirked under his mask when he felt her nervousness. May-san, he began, Saru is our team's greatest strategist. You should take whatever he says serious. He felt Saru's gratitude at the kind words. It could help liberate your country. May nodded, not wanting to argue with the boy's words. She had underestimated the small cell from Konoha once already, and that had proven to be a bad idea. What is it you wish to suggest? She asked him genuinely. She wanted her home out from underneath Igura's cruel reign more than anything. If she had to play nice with the leaf then she would. Her ego meant little if her people continued to stain the shores red. Mizu was more than ready to leave war behind and enter the nice long vacation that was peace. Too many innocents had died already. I take it back, Poseidon announced as a shit-eating grin spawned on his face, she's Athena 2.0. He ducked under the spear that was sent flying at him, cause there's no way Owlhead would ever play nice with anyone. Athena growled at him, her eyes set in a ferocious glare. If she ever got her hands on him, she would strangle him to death. Sarah once again glanced at Nico for approval. After seeing Nezumi show her so much respect, he would be damned before he showed her anything but the same. His age didn't matter. The blonde boy was Sarah's hero. After receiving another movement of his captain's head to continue, the Nara Anbu operative began to explain the plans he had created in the seconds he had heard them bring up the problem they were facing. He knew it was a good idea to familiarize himself with the geography of Mizu no Kuni before leaving for the mission. That, added to his already brilliant mind, was truly nothing to laugh at. He wondered if this made him what Nezumi called a monster. He sure hoped so. After his explanation was finished, Nico and Mei were confused when they saw Seru staring at the base's ceiling, obviously lost in his own thought, and Nezumi nodding slowly at said monkey-faced man in an approving manner. Why did the blonde have both of his thumbs up? Did they miss something? Karasu, like always, was watching the happenings with indifference. The laughter that resounded caused the floor of the artificial dimension to shake. Even the chairs, that were bolted down, looked like they were about to be ripped out of the ground. Izumi sighed in content when he fell down on the bed Mei had said he was free to use, both mask and shirt forgotten on the floor. It was the most comfortable thing the young agent had felt in a long time. The Anbu's commendations were meant to be functional and nothing more. Comforting things apparently dulled the senses. Nezumi thought it was such a load of bull. He loved Hokage, he did, but the man was such a cheapskate. Well, kudos to the guy for having an excuse, especially one that no one can argue against, Apollo grinned. He himself had used such excuses when he was in the mortal world. Another sigh left his small lips, the bed really was comfortable. He had a whole 10 hours to rest his body for tomorrow's assignment, which relied heavily on him and Karasu. The rest was very welcome. The young blonde was a juggernaut in many cases, stamina being one of them, but even he got tired. The small team had only stopped twice in the 3-day trip to Mizu no Kuni. They didn't even take a boat. Nico had the team run the entire ocean that lay in between Water Country and Hai no Kuni. Afterwards, he had been sent to single-handedly take out an entire prison. Yes, he had volunteered to do so, but that was a moot point. The resistance needed to be shown what they were given. He was the only one who could show them properly. So when the beautiful woman had accepted Seru's plans and shown them to where they would be sleeping for the majority of the time they were in Mizu, after the small tour of the subterranean base, the blonde had been more than thrilled. When she revealed that they had separate rooms, he had been surprised. The woman must have been really impressed by his actions, because now she was treating them almost like royalty. Zeus nodded his head, power is might. If you have it, you should be respected and treated like a king. He never noticed the rolling eyes of his family, and young Naruto has it in spades. He may have been over-exaggerating though, because even lower-class citizens had their own rooms and beds. But it had been years since he moved into Anbu HQ, and the small closet that was considered a room and the paper-thin mat he slept on was beginning to get old. He willed his eyes open, his Anbu training not letting him fall asleep until he inspected the room he was in. Even though he knew they wouldn't turn against them, the years of training had drilled into his brain that non-Konoha shinobi were always the enemy. He was in an average-sized room, the same color as the earth it was made from. The bed took up a lot of the space, being 4 times the size of his mat back home. Now that he thought about it, it was a bit strange. Why did he have a king-sized bed? He was in an average-sized room, the same color as the earth it was made from. The bed took up a lot of the space, being 4 times the size of his mat back home. Now that he thought about it, it was a bit strange. Why did he have a king-sized bed? There were 2 medium-sized nightstands on each side of him, both having random things thrown on them like someone used them regularly. Also confusing. The right side of the room had what Nezumi thought to be a walk-in closet. He couldn't tell from his position propped up on his elbows, but he would wager that it was full with someone's clothing. He didn't know why, but it seemed like he was given someone else's room. It could have been on accident, or maybe the person was gone for the night or was no longer with the resistance. Whatever the reason may be, he didn't really care at the moment. He was exhausted and ready to drift off into slumber for the remaining time he had left for relaxation. In his tired state, he had forgotten to check on his team's position, like he always did when he was out of the village with comrades. Not 5 minutes after he had closed his eyes to try and relax, did the door to his temporary room slide open. His eyes opened and he went upright. Of course he had to accidentally be given someone else's room, nothing could just be easy, could it? Before he could sit up completely, he was gently pushed back down into the soft sheets of the bed covers. "Where do you think you're going, cutie?" A female voice purred in his ear. He immediately recognized the voice as Terumi Mei, the leader of the resistance. If he couldn't feel the emotions of the woman he would already have killed her 3 times over by now. He'd never been so grateful of his abilities. "No you don't think?" Hermes' grin was infectious as Apollo soon joined him in grinning. "I mean he's only 6 or something right? She's like what, 25? The two shared a high five, the boy must have been blessed by some sort of luck god. The goddess of the hearth looked heavily scandalized, he was just a boy. Her opinion of Mei had just dropped so impossibly low that it could have been mistaken for the ground itself. Aphrodite scowled at the scene, her eyes glowing pink. A handsome lad like Naruto deserved someone far more beautiful than Mei. There were far better catches in the sea such as herself. "I was going to go find myself a new room to sleep in," he replied with a perfect poker face. He couldn't afford to show emotion and give her the wrong idea. This one obviously belongs to you. May tightened her grip on the boy's shoulder. Don't be so quick to leave a woman when she hasn't said what she wants to say. She purred in his ear again. He wondered if she actually thought she trapped him. She had to know by now that he was stronger than her in every way possible. It's just rude. She added after he was silent. She's good, I'll give her that. Aphrodite grumbled to herself as she crossed her arms under her bust. The way that they bounced caused all the men to hold their noses so that they weren't knocked out by blood loss. Though the looks that they were receiving from the women was enough to make them wish that they had let the Titans win. Her body and warmth did feel good. He may only be 10, but he was still able to admire the female body. It is a wonderful thing after all. And what is it you wish to discuss, May-san? He asked politely. He knew how to keep calm and collected even in a situation like this one. He tried his best to ignore when she pressed her substantial bust against his chest sensually, their faces so close he could feel her breath hit his warm flesh. You seem to be a very mature young man, Nezumi-san. She replied, adding the respectable honorific to his codename for the first time since his arrival. You must have been with a woman by now, even if you are so young. She continued, now rubbing her chest against his. Am I correct? She asked, giving off the feeling that she thought she was right. You would be wrong, May-san. He eventually said. I am still very much a virgin. He added clinically, talking like he was speaking about the weather or something else just as unimportant. The woman's purr was absolutely sensational. So I'd be the first to taste this incredibly yummy looking flesh then. She licked the boy's bare neck. Good. Both Hera and Hestia glared at the love goddess, they knew that she had something to do with May turning into a pedophile. It would take time, but they would make sure that she got her punishment. They'd allowed her to run wild for far too long. Aphrodite, seeing the glares, scoffed, I don't have anything to do with that. Even if I did, I'd make sure that it ended badly for May. In her head she was kind of hoping that someone would kill or maim the woman. Rape, for her, wasn't out of the question either. Truth, being all-knowing, couldn't help but be surprised. Aphrodite was reacting far more harshly than he had thought to the auburn-haired woman. It made him wonder what would happen if he put the two into one room. Naruto sighed. He really hated to have to do this. He took her wrist into his hand, gently guiding it away from his body. I'm sorry May-san, but I cannot sleep with you. He sighed again. He really hated his ability sometimes. I feel I am too young at this time to have sex. He pulled her other hand off his body. I hope you can understand. He finished, sighing once more. May pouted. Don't be like that, cutie, it's normal for shinobi to have sex at young ages. Our lives aren't very long. She tried to reason with the boy. It was true, too, shinobi weren't guaranteed to live long in their line of work, and so releasing some of their tension through sex was a common occurrence. Still, Nezumi was 10, and most 10-year-olds didn't even know what sex was, never mind be interested in it. The Uzumaki really hated that he wasn't like most 10-year-olds at times. Right now being the case in point. Are you kidding me? Apollo gaped at the blonde boy, don't tell me you're rejecting the bombshell of a woman. No man, either mortal or divine, could resist such an offer. It didn't matter if he was 10, he was still mentally mature enough to appreciate such an event. He winced as a hand slapped his head, its owner's silver eyes burning holes into Apollo's head. Times like this made her regret being born. She had to deal with such acts of depravity on a daily basis. Truth merely smiled as he listened to the thoughts of Artemis. While she thought she had it bad, he'd seen far worse. He'd seen worlds where people ate their own children, where women were nothing more than objects. He'd seen worlds where women were the evilest thing to walk the face of the planet. He'd seen it all. It wasn't that he didn't want to sleep with her, because he did, he really did. It wasn't even because he was embarrassed about the size of his equipment, because he wasn't. He really wasn't. If anything, he was proud of his size actually. For a 10-year-old, for any age actually, he was more than adequate. He didn't know that he had his Uzumaki blood to thank for that not-so-small gift from God. That's a relief. Apollo blew a sigh of said relief as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. For a moment, I thought that he was gay. He had no problem with him being gay, actually now that he thought about it, Naruto would be more likely to want to have sex with Apollo if he were gay. Aphrodite couldn't help but blush at the thought of Naruto having a big tool. Really, she was starting to absolutely want May dead. It really only came down to two things, one being the main reason for his refusal of sleeping with a beautiful woman. The first and less important reason was that she was still a Kirinin, even if she was trying to bring the current Mizukage down. That didn't really count though. Yugura was an ass who needed to die. The second and most prominent reason was the obvious one. His age. He had no childish thoughts about the act. He knew exactly what it was and was curious about it ever since he first understood what it was many years ago, which is why he was hating his abilities at the moment. He just didn't really want to lose his virginity at 10. It was just a personal preference, was all. I know exactly what you mean, May. He left the san part out of her name. They seemed to be very personal at the moment and weren't in the presence of others. If I was a little older then I would have happily taken you up on your offer. He tried to reassure her. He could feel her disappointment. If it's about your size then worry not. May started, reaching under the covers and his pants at the waistline. There are plenty of other ways to pleasure someone, size doesn't matter all that much to me. She was telling the truth, Nezumi could tell. I won't tease you, Anything she was about to say was cut off when she had the surprisingly large manhood that belonged to the boy grasped in her hand. Okay, that's just not fair, the auburn-haired woman thought when she recovered from her shock. Izumi did chuckle this time. Yup, he really was a monster, through and through. Wow, Aphrodite drooled at the scene. She was totally going to get her hands on that boy and have him screw her silly. She licked her lips in excitement, it was going to be so much fun, for the both of them. He again grabbed her arm, taking her hand out of his pants and releasing her grip on his member. That's not what I'm worried about. He said rather smugly. The look and feeling of shock and disbelief on her face was completely worth letting her grab a handful of what was between his legs. I honestly think that I am too young for sex. When he felt that she finally believed him, he was relieved. He didn't want to offend her. She wasn't the reason he didn't want to have sex. He just wanted to wait before he started that chapter in his life. Her next pout was genuine. After knowing what the boy was packing, he couldn't really blame her. Such a shame. She sighed, getting out of the bed and walking into the closet for a moment. I really was looking forward to getting to know you better. She called out from the closet. She walked out a short moment later in a rather revealing nightgown. Oh well, I guess you can't have everything you want. She said softly, slipping into the covers next to him. Before he could get out from underneath the covers to leave the room and look for another place to lay his head, slim arms wrapped around his torso, pulling him into their owner's embrace. May, he began, slightly confused when the woman's legs wrapped around his own. She was successfully spooning him now. What are you doing? He didn't mind it too much, he just didn't appreciate being the little spoon. You said you didn't want to have sex with me. She began. And I respect that, I do. She continued. But if you think I'm going to spend the rest of the night alone after feeling your warmth, you're sadly mistaken. She finished with a happy smile. Izumi had the same smile on his face. He would be okay with that. Having someone to sleep with, actually sleep, was always the best way to do it. The warmth was a constant reminder that you weren't alone. The blonde had only shared a bed once before with a client he spent the night with in a cave 3 months ago. They had been forced to take shelter for the night and the teenage girl had asked him if she could share a bedroll with him. He could feel that she was scared and was only seeking warmth and company, so he had given the girl what she wanted. He found he rather enjoyed it. And in case you decide you want to take my body in the night, feel free to do so. She purred into the back of his neck. Please. She added in a sensual manner, causing the boy to shiver. Damn, she found a way to get at him. He needed to find a way at her now. He smirked. She really didn't know what she was getting into. He was a monster, but he was a pranking god as well, and he knew a challenge when he saw one. Let the games begin. If he beats her, I'm making him my champion. The kid really is a monster in everything he does. Hermes joked, his blue eyes sparkling with a mischief that he was well known for. Maybe he could even take my trickster domain. Gods know I have too many. No, Zeus stated, if anything I will decide the domains that he will receive, no one else. I don't need you morons giving him something stupid. His glare cowed the two gods. Apollo and Hermes shivered at the look on their father's face, understood. When Nico had woke up next to both Karasu and Seru in the small room the resistance gave them for their stay in Mizu no Kuni, she had been slightly sore. The room was very small, just barely able to fit the three of them. She didn't know where Nezumi had spent the night, but she wasn't too worried, the boy could take care of himself. You have too much faith in Naruto, Hades said in a low voice, his eyes shadowed by his long black hair. In this matter he is not prepared for such things. All in all, he looked a lot like Darth Sidious when he was wearing his robe. Her only real problem was when Seru's hand not so accidentally landed on her body during the night, near her chest region. That pervert. She didn't mind sleeping next to Karasu, the young boy she knew to be an Uchiha. Everyone knew who he was a perfect gentleman, allowing her to take the bedding with the most padding. Seru, however, was a different story altogether. She didn't like sharing a sleeping area with him at all. She didn't need to be up so early, she had another hour before she needed to get up, but she was always an early bird. She liked to get up and train a little in Kenjutsu, just like Hei-kun had told her she should, even if she was in another country. When she made it to the training grounds Mei had shown her and the team the previous night, she wasn't at all surprised to see Nezumi now clad in full Anbu gear there before her. What did surprise her was that he wasn't alone. Wantarumi Mei was currently sparring with her youngest comrade. From what she could tell, it was Taijutsu only, but like everything else the boy did, he was the dominant one. To the auburn-haired woman's credit, she was holding her own pretty well. She was keeping up at the very least. That just showed that the woman was as powerful as they said she was. She went blow for blow with the blonde, but Nico could tell that he was holding back quite a lot too. Mei obviously wasn't going all out either, but she was trying harder than the boy just to keep up. She could see the woman's playful smirk. She was enjoying the spar a little too much. What exactly happened while her kohai was gone during the night? She had the feeling that if he didn't have his mask on, she'd see the same playful look on Izumi's face. Why were the two so chummy? Understanding dawned on everyone's faces. It was Ares who voiced it first, though, I can't believe it. The bitch is actually jealous, haha. He wiped a tear from his eyes, and she says she has someone waiting for her. What a load of bull. I don't know what to say either, maybe she sees him as a little brother. Hestia suggested, though it was obvious she wasn't comfortable with the subject. I mean, there has to be a real reason. The right jab from Mei was blocked and then used against her to throw the woman to the ground. It was a clean and precise move, executed perfectly. What came after it was not so professional. The boy actually straddled the powerful Kunoichi and bent down so that his mask was dangerously close to her face. Words that Nico couldn't hear were passed between the two, causing the woman to actually blush and then squirm out of his grasp. It was for naught though, his physical strength far surpassed hers and she was firmly stuck. The temporary Rohan captain could hear the boy laugh before he let her out of his intimate hold. She coughed to announce her presence, which she knew was not necessary. With the boy's sensory capabilities he knew where everyone in the whole base was, but she did it anyways. She knew he could feel her uncomfortableness with the whole extremely close contact that he was sharing with the leader of the resistance, but she still thought it best to voice her opinion. He was 10 for crying out loud. Before she could open her mouth to say anything, however, he glanced over his shoulder at her, giving her a silent warning that he knew she would receive. I'll follow your orders, but do not forget who I am. Message received. Nico's mouth firmly shut, not wanting to risk her command for something she really had no say in. Yes, we know who holds the leash in this relationship. Dionysus's grin was wickedly sharp as his ever-changing eyes spun with wicked glee. It was times like this that reminded his family why he was a god and that he was no pushover. Nico Taicho, Nizumi-senpai. She heard Saru greet them as he walked into the training room. She had never been so grateful to see the perverted Nara in her life. Looks like we all got up a little early then. He said, Karasu walking in shortly after the words left the monkey's mouth, giving everyone present a respectful nod of his head in greeting. Izumi gave Karasu a nod in greeting of his own. It would seem so. The blonde replied, now standing at a proper distance from Mei. He had let Nico see their close and friendlier relationship, only so that the team's captain knew everything that she needed to know. He wasn't going to give her any details, not only because there wasn't really anything to give, but even if there was, it was none of her business. What he did in his private time was his and his alone to know. His age aside, he was considered an adult by shinobi standards, having become one the moment he was assigned to the Anbu. He didn't really want the others to know though. Karasu would most likely not care, but that was beside the point. He and the Uchiha liked to keep their private lives private. Saru was the one he didn't want to find out. The man would never let him live it down, and he was positive the rest of Team Ro would know of his conquest, which wasn't the truth, shortly after the Nara caught wind of it. He had no delusions that his team wouldn't believe he turned down someone like Mei, so he decided to keep it quiet. Well. Mei spoke up, picking up a towel and handing it to Nizumi. I'm going to go wash off. She then took her own towel and wiped off the sweat from her brow. She bent down and whispered into the blonde's ear so that only he could hear her. If you'd like to join me, you know where my room is. The woman was trying to mess with him again. Izumi smirked under his mask. Sounds wonderful. He whispered back, enjoying her surprised pause. I'll meet you there in a few minutes. He added, feeling both her shock and excitement. He was looking right at her, but his face mask was blocking his mischievous smirk. It took her a few moments, but she finally realized that he wasn't being serious. He is good, Hermes grinned, glad to see that Naruto was also a monster in wordplay. Already his mind was working out how to claim the mortal for himself, to create chaos amongst the mortals. With Naruto, the famed trickster of the gods would be back in play. It would be nice to get back into shape regarding that domain he'd been inactive for far too long. Damn, he had gotten her good that time. He was obviously more skilled in the art of subtle, or maybe not so subtle, teasing. It was a good thing she liked the boy. If any other man tried to speak to her the way he now did, she would have melted his face off with her yoten. Or so she told herself. Denial was something she didn't have much experience with. She, deep down, knew that she could never harm the boy, even if she wanted to. He was on a different level than anyone she had ever seen before. Mei gave the blonde a look that said he won this round and walked away. making sure to sway her hips more than necessary, which both Nezumi and Nico didn't miss. That woman is hot with a capital H. Apparently Seru didn't miss it either. Karasu chuckled lightly. The Uchiha knew who that little display of provocative walking was for. It didn't surprise him either. Nezumi was just the kind of person that people of all ages liked, in more ways than one. Let us spar for the remaining time we have. Nico said, getting the attention of the 3 males she had under her command at the moment. We don't want to dull our senses. That little remark forced Nezumi to remember Mei's offer last night. He really wished he was older and more prepared. Ah well, there would always be plenty fish in the sea later. And who knows, when he did age a little more, he might just get the offer for sex from the auburn-haired woman again. A monster could dream, despite popular beliefs. Hades snorted, I wouldn't call them dreams. He still remembered the one time that he had entered the dreams of a monster. Poor thing could only think about killing and eating anything that wasn't a deity. It was a real shame that he couldn't permanently kill the thing. After the hour of training, the Konoha Anbu team found themselves in the large room they first entered upon their arrival to Mizu no Kuni. Sitting on one side of the large meeting table was Terumi Mei and Ao, on the other was Nico and Nezumi. Both Karasu and Seru were standing, letting their senpais sit as a sign of their seniority. It was strange to most of the resistance, they all knew that Nezumi was the youngest, yet the boy had seniority over 2 older operatives. Word had already spread around the resistance in the short time Nezumi had returned from Black Harbor of his actions. A lone boy had crushed the Kiri prison with ease, and that very boy was a Konoha nin sent with 3 others to assist them with their cause. The people finally had another hero, Mei being their first to look up to. Hope was slowly returning to the hearts of the resistance, and it had been no more than 16 hours since the Anbu arrived. After Mei had seriously considered Seru's plan, she had concluded that it was brilliant and simple. It wouldn't have worked however if everything he said that needed to fall in place didn't happen or the super powerful blonde wasn't with him. Fortunately, and rather amazingly, everything that the monkey mask agent had said was necessary did in fact occur. Mei was beginning to believe that all of Konoha's shinobi were in some way terrifying. The strategic thought process of the operative who came off as a pervert was absolutely mind-blowing. The fact that his plan was incredibly simple and completely ingenious at the same time made the woman's head hurt. The plan was as follows. Have Nezumi and Karasu attack several of Yugura's bases on every island physically possible in the span of a week. And, like Seru knew his senpai would do at Black Harbor, allow 3 or 4 Kiri loyalists return to the Mizukage to report what was happening. Once word had reached Kiri and its forces that children were responsible for the fall of so many outposts, not only would it lower morale, it would get the attention of the man they were sent to kill. It is a good plan, Athena said, although it sounded like it hurt her to admit it. She wasn't the type of person to compliment others, instead, choosing to curse anyone who was better than her at anything. The reason was very simple. She was a sore loser. Once Yugura was given so many reports of mere children destroying his forces slowly, he would be forced to intervene personally, falling right into the trap that was laid out for him. Once he was in Nezumi's sight, he would soon be gone from this world. It was simple. It was elementary. It was, in Seru's words, untroublesome. Nezumi said he didn't spam the word, not that it was banned from his vocabulary. It would also allow the resistance ample time to prepare for what was to come after the week-long havoc spree. The destruction of the weapons factory would commence a few days afterward, and with that, added to all of the other chaos caused by the young Anbu agents, the resistance would take their first real step in winning the war. Mei was overjoyed. Mizu no Kuni was so close to freedom and equality for all her people she could practically taste it. It was only a matter of time now, and not much of it. She really needed to find a proper way of thanking Konoha for sending her the knight in shining armor that went by the codename Nezumi. So, we all know what our assignments are, right? Mei asked, getting nods from all present. Good. Her voice was low, but everyone could hear her with clarity. Let's send our enemies straight to hell. She finished with a smirk that Nezumi knew all too well. She had found her inner monster. Trust me, if she'd actually found it she would have been dead 10 times over, Dionysus commented with a smirk, inner monsters are not something to be trifled with. The boy was still too young to see the whole picture. Maybe he would learn one day, but for now he could keep his naive viewpoint. It was more than enough to deal with the world of mortals. The following week had gone off without a hitch. Nezumi and Karasu had been going from base to base, raising them all to the ground like it was a holy crusade. They were alone, the rest of the Rohan contingent staying with the resistance, helping to prepare for the raid that was to come. It never ceased to amaze Nezumi how efficient Karasu was when in battle. The Uchiha was only 13, and he was the closest to Nezumi out of the 4 that were with him in strength. The blonde realized that he couldn't really say anything when it came to someone's age, him being 10 and all, but he was a special case. He was born with a power no one before him possessed. Yes, there were other Senin, but none of them were born so closely intertwined with natural energy like he was. So, for Karasu to show such prowess, with only the Sharingan to aid him, was no small feat. The two of them are power incarnate. Hermes said with a small frown, I'd hate to meet the person who gets on their bad sides. It would only be a matter of time before the rest of his family tried to get their greedy hands on Naruto, or even Karasu. Closing his eyes, the god created a latent blessing that would activate should the boys ever step foot on the earth. It was his way of preventing anyone from upsetting the balance of the universe. Nezumi could feel his closest friend's heart. The boy was a pacifist only taking lives so that he could protect his village. In a way, they were alike. Nezumi only enjoyed being a monster to protect his village. He didn't like to cause the innocent suffering. He was in a country torn by war to stop that very thing right now. He didn't like to hurt the weak or helpless either. He only enjoyed killing when the men and women he killed deserved it. People like Yagura, whom he was planning on adding to his already large and still growing body count. Where they differed though, was that Karasu never enjoyed killing ever. He only did so as a means to an end. He knew the act of killing was an important factor in a shinobi's life, and he dealt with it instead of complaining. There were only a handful of shinobi that the Hokage could trust completely to do anything he ordered unconditionally, and Karasu was one of them. Aries looked torn. On one hand, he liked the fact that Karasu obeyed orders like a good soldier. What he didn't like was the fact that he didn't enjoy killing and didn't attempt to kill more. Naruto, on the other hand, actually enjoyed killing others. The problem was the fact that he wouldn't abandon his morals or values. That made him both appealing and disgusting to Aries. So they traversed the islands that made up Mizu no Kuni, bringing down to the ground any Kiri bases they could find. With Nezumi's extremely large sensory field, it was uncomplicated. Actually taking out the bases was like child's play. Without Karasu, Nezumi could have brought them down almost effortlessly. With him, the blonde almost felt depressed at the ease they were able to finish their task. Mei was telling the truth when she described the Mizukage's plan for overwhelming the resistance. Team Ro had been told that much of Yagura's armies were made up of very green genin. The man with questionable sanity had been promoting unready aspiring shinobi, the kind of people no sane cage would ever let into their ranks, to genin, so that he could fill the empty spots the resistance made in his forces. He was giving weapons to men and women, boys and girls, who had no business being a shinobi in the first place. They couldn't even use them properly for God's sake. It was sad, and it angered Nezumi to no end. The kind of person it took to send his people in the slaughterhouse like cattle was the kind of person that the young Anbu agent loved to kill. His Hokage knew of this as well, and the wrath that was the god of shinobi was already in Mizu no Kuni in the form of one Nezumi mask Anbu operative. The man never should have touched a Hai no Kuni citizen. He would die for that now. Konoha would have her vengeance. Good. Heshia's glare made even Hades pause. No one wanted a mad Heshia that was a nightmare that made even Zu scared. The last time that such a thing happened, well, it had resulted in the fire that burned down most of London in 1666. The glow in Heshia's eyes was bright and powerful. That man needs to pay for using children in his war. Nezumi. Karasu suddenly spoke. This will be our last target before we have to return. He finished, his voice only audible to the blonde. Even though they were friends, the two hardly ever shared words. It was like a silent friendship, each knowing what the other thought of them. In Nezumi's case, he actually did know what the Uchiha felt. HN. Nezumi replied. He already knew as much. The week had been a slow one, and the blonde couldn't wait to return to the resistance. Mei had told him that when he returned, he was welcome to sleep in her bed with her again. She had enjoyed his company, too. Nezumi couldn't wait. They could see their target in the distance. Karasu activated his Sharingan. The walls were a light shade of gray. The exterior was reinforced with metals, 3 different kinds. The guard's tower had 2 men inside it. Both were of short stature, no older than 20 if their complexion was anything to go by. 15 traps set, they were getting nervous. Good. Inside the fortress, the walls were made up of some kind of hardened clay and wood. Flammable. The ground was nothing but earth. Good. The cobblestone they saw in the markets would have been inconvenient. Conclusion. It's going to be just as easy as the other 80. All of this happened in the time span of 3 seconds. Itachi had mastery over the Sharingan most adult Uchiha couldn't hope to accomplish. Time to work. Karasu could see Nezumi take off his mask and his peripherals. The vicious smirk on his face told him all he needed to know. Naruto was awake. The monster was off its leash. Time to play. Truth smiled as he saw the scene, his red eyes flickering to a shade of blue that was quite strange on his form. This was a very good story. Maybe it was time that he brought someone else to this world. You two were able to take out 81 bases in a week. Ao sputtered unintelligently. He was stricken with shock and awe. That many bases would have taken the resistance months to complete. These Konoha Anbu were terrifyingly effective. Correct, Ao-san. Karasu replied. 81 Kiri-controlled outposts are no more. He clarified, the man's facial expression slightly amusing him. Nico gave a short nod. Good. Now that we're so close to being ready to hit the factory in Shio, all of this should be finished up within the next week. It couldn't happen too soon either. She really missed her boyfriend. Yes. Mei sighed contently. And Mizu no Kuni will know war no more. The huge heartwarming smile on the woman's face even made Nezumi smile. He was glad that he could help these people out in their time of suffering. They deserved it. When the blonde thought about it, he realized how absurd it all was. A monster was the hero, setting a land free and saving its people. Ah well, nothing about him was normal, might as well live in irony. Normal? What does that strange word mean? Hermes joked. Personally, he thought that the word was cruel. Why should someone be confined to the norms that other mortals set? They in truth shared a nod, they both understood the importance of being themselves, no matter what others thought. Mei-sama. A woman Nezumi didn't recognize appeared from the entrance of the hideout. A man is here claiming to be Jiraiya of the Sannin. The woman reported. He's here to speak with the Konoha Anbu. She finished, giving Mei a deep bow before vanishing again. Mei raised an eyebrow. Did Konoha send a Sannin to help me as well? She asked Nico with an incredulous expression. Izumi thought he felt his fellow sage. It would seem so. The blonde replied for his captain, already making his way to the entrance. He hadn't seen his sensei in a long time now. Are you sure it's him? Nico asked, also confused as to why the Hokage would send someone as renowned as the legendary Toad Sage to a place such as this. The man may be the most perverted human being alive, but he was still shown the highest form of respect, even from women at times. He was a hero, an extremely powerful and, at times, wise man who helped in the last two great shinobi world wars. So you may be confused, but he peeps on women, no matter what they're doing, Truth admitted as he looked at all the females in the room. He was able to tell that they were angry, even without his unique status. Artemis grit her teeth in annoyance. If she ever got her hands on his neck, she'd make sure that he spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair. It's him. Nezumi said excitedly. I'd recognize my old Iro-sennin anywhere. Mei giggled. This was the first time she'd seen Nezumi act, even if only a little, childish. It was a welcome sight. It reminded her that he was still human, capable of things besides death and destruction. The blonde disappeared into the small tunnel that led to the hut above, and when he returned, sure enough, the aforementioned Sannin was with him. Nico, Karasu, and Seru all immediately bowed their heads. Lord Jiraiya. Nico greeted. She was in the presence of a living legend. The man gave them a nod, allowing them to rise. So. The Sannin said, taking a moment to look around the underground base. What are you up to now, kid? Ah, you know, just a little mission Gigi wants done. What about you? Everyone present sweat dropped. He was speaking so casually about something so important to someone so legendary, like it was the most natural thing in the world, not to mention his completely disrespectful way of addressing the leader of Konoha. You better not be here for your research, Iro-sennin. In case you haven't noticed, we're kind of busy with a war right now. He added, narrowing his eyes at the older man underneath his mask. Jiraiya waved his hand in a dismissive manner. Nothing like that, kid. He replied, smiling at his godson. I just thought I'd come and see how you were doing. I haven't seen you in a while, you know. He finished, using his large hand to mess up the boy's hair. Izumi swatted the hand that was attacking his already messy hair away, mumbling something about old perverts. Well, since you're here you can help us on our next assignment. The blonde said with a smirk. You can have a hand in freeing Mizu. Mei took this as a way to enter the conversation. That would be wonderful, Jiraiya-sama. That was her first mistake. With the help of both Nezumi and yourself, the resistance is sure to win. Because now the pervert saw what a beauty she was. Aphrodite kissed her teeth. She was still far more beautiful than the auburn woman. She shot a glare at everyone that was snickering. This was not funny. Oh ho. Jiraiya shouted, steam seeming to rush out of his nose. And what do we have here? His voice was now annoying Nezumi. Such a beautiful woman as you should be sitting on a throne with a crown on her head, not in a place like this. He used his hands to gesture to the earth-made base. That was his first mistake. Izumi was about to say something about him leaving her alone when the auburn-haired woman seemed to glide towards him. I made this comfortable base, Jiraiya-san. She said in a sickly sweet voice, causing the Sennin to shiver. Are you trying to say that I am not proficient with Doton? Jiraiya gulped. Izumi chuckled before he rescued his terrified sensei. Mei-san, we need him alive so that he can help us when it's time for the raid. Mei sighed, but relented. Thanks, kid. One Sennin whispered to another. Izumi shook his head. When was his sensei ever going to learn? Apollo shook his head, people like him, Zeus, and Jiraiya would never learn. They were lovers and artists. They would not stop with just one woman, even if they wanted to. That was just not who they were. So, the crazy bastards sent their heads to Sensei, then Jiraiya repeated with his voice now serious. When he became like this, like the respectable veteran shinobi that he was, everyone paid attention to him. That sounds like something Sensei would send someone like you to retaliate for. Naruto, his mask was off and he was able to truly be himself in front of the man who had familial feelings for him, nodded his head in agreement. He knew he was the Sandame's top operative by now, up there with Inu Taicho and Karasu. Whenever there was an important issue that needed to be handled, with a 100% guarantee of success, Naruto was the person to be sent, especially when it came to missions that involved a lot of destruction and mayhem. Igura tried to play games with Jiji, which was not something he should have done. Naruto replied, rubbing the back of his head absent-mindedly. He'll soon know the consequences of his foolish actions. He finished, stretching his back with a resounding pop. Death to those who purposely try to harm Konoha or her citizens. Jiraiya finished what his godson was implying. Naruto nodded, making his way to the door where he paused and looked back at the white-haired man. Hell hath no fury. He whispered before leaving Jiraiya's personal room. He was tired and he couldn't wait, so share a bed with the beautiful Kunoichi named Terumi May again. The blonde's unfinished sentence was left to the breeze inside the base. Like a woman scorned. Konoha being the now bloodthirsty woman. I take offense to that, Artemis muttered as she crossed her below her chest. Sure, women could be bitches, but they weren't bloodthirsty monsters. That honor belonged to people without a conscience. Ruth rolled his eyes as he shot the screen of, and we've just completed chapter 4. He got off his seat and stretched his back, a loud pop resonating through the room. He glanced through the room, multiple thoughts running through his mind. Snapping his fingers, a portal formed. He walked to it and stepped through it, his head is the last thing to follow. I got to go and take care of something. I'll be back in a few minutes. What if Naruto God of Destruction Percy Jackson, and thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.